across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. You knew that already. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is fabulous to have your company. Lots and lots to talk about today. If you do miss anything from the show, go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. If you did miss my interview in the last 20 minutes of the show yesterday with Helen Webberley, who is a very much, should we say, let's go pro-trans activist doctor, do take a look, because I think you might, for want of a better word, enjoy it, I think. Do take a look at our YouTube page. Worth going to. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show is where you will find it, or on my X feed. Now, coming up in this hour, we're going to discuss that long-awaited defence investment plan, finally published today by Keir Starmer, pretty much his final act, major act as Prime Minister. He says it would keep Britain safe and secure long into the future. But in reality, it's at least £9 billion short of what is the bare minimum of what would keep us safe. Is this not just a last act of a Prime Minister on his way out, but actually an act of treachery by a Prime Minister, not doing what he should do, thinking he's got some sort of legacy by basically shortchanging the British people on what we need to defend our nation and our borders? Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We're also going to be talking about Andy Burnham, that big speech. We took the whole thing live on the show yesterday. He wants to run Britain part-time from Manchester, apparently. The leadership frontrunner, currently the only leadership candidate to take over from Keir Starmer, yesterday said that he wants to set up number 10 North in Manchester. It would be the nerve centre of his government. He's going to rewire Britain, but he's going to do it while not living in number 10 and working part of the week in Manchester. All I can see is a lot of very expensive claims for first-class rail travel, can't you? Plus, asylum seekers, according to the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, are going to be forced to pay back £10,000 of their hotel accommodation and benefit bills under legislation being announced today, except, of course, none of them actually will pay it back, because most of them don't have a job, and even the ones who do have a job earn a fraction of the minimum wage and would never have to pay it back. It's another load of absolute tripe and nonsense, failing to tackle the actual issues. You can see where I'm going with my theme today, can't you? Plus, resident doctors, used to call them junior doctors, have voted to end their strikes after accepting a pay deal that will see the most experienced earn more than £100,000 a year. Question is, though, after accepting another pay deal, how soon until they ask for the next one and go on strike again? Because that's what they did 2 years ago, is it not? Anyway, I want to hear your thoughts on any and all of the topics we're talking about, but in particular, I want to hear your thoughts on the defence plan. If you want to talk more about Andy Burnham, we didn't get to as many calls as we hoped yesterday because of this rather extended interview with Helen Webberley, but I think if you listen to it, you'll agree it was worth it. But I promise to get to more of your calls today, absolutely promise. So get on the phone lines now. In particular, I do want to hear from you about Keir Starmer's last major act as Prime Minister is a £14.5 billion defence plan. It's only half of what the UK needs to defend itself. Who's saying that? Well, literally anyone who knows anything about defence, which is absolutely not our outgoing Prime Minister. I genuinely think this is an act of treachery. I think it's political madness on his part, and if he thinks it's his legacy, well, actually he's right, because it sums up his premiership very, very well. Absolutely useless and misjudged. There you go. And shortchanging the nation. What is your reaction? I'd be very surprised if it's any different. I'd love to hear from you if you're a serviceman or woman, or former serviceman or woman. We're going to be talking, obviously, to some very senior defence figures later in the show. But give us a call. Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word talk and your message to 87222, or you can get in touch on X at Talk TV. Already a lot of messages coming in on there. Calls are charged at the national rate and text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Delighted to say joining me for the chat today is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. A very good morning to you.
Morning.
Let's be very clear, neither you nor I is a defence expert. I still think we know a damn sight more about the defence needs of this country than one Keir Starmer, Esquire, currently sitting in number 10. He's going to be out on the 20th of July. Cannot wait, literally counting down the minutes until he is gone. Not entirely sure Andy Burnham's going to be any better, but good riddance at least to Keir Starmer. It is absolutely extraordinary that his final big act, almost just sort of a kind of a, it's almost a tantrum, this, is that he's going to announce this defence investment plan. It's been waiting for it for over a year. He had a battle with his then Defence Secretary John Healey, who, when he said he wanted to spend only £30.5 billion, only 10 billion of which was actually new money. It wasn't just an accounting game. Apparently the new defence, he resigned, new Defence Secretary Dan Jarvis apparently has negotiated an extra billion. Woohoo! You'd be surprised how little £1 billion can buy. The current defence budget is 65 billion. The plan is that by 2030, on the spending we're talking about in this DIP, as it's called, Defence Investment Plan, we will be up to spending 2.69% of GDP. John Healey resigned when he was offered 2.68%. Is everyone keeping up at the back? I.e., this is nothing. The NATO target is by 2035, so in less than 10 years we need to be spending 3.5%. By the way, by 2035 we'll be spending 10% because we'll probably be at war, because Russia will have done something to sabotage our cyber attack or something on such an extent we will have no choice. Poland's currently spending 4.5%. Germany's spending 3.7%. This is the most astonishing stat. In terms of countries in NATO that are basically rearming because of the threat we are facing, out of 32 NATO nations, guess, everybody, where the UK is in terms of the ramping up of spending on defence. 31 out of 32. And do you know who's behind us? Iceland. And do you know why they're behind us? They literally don't have a military. Is this not an act of treachery by the Prime Minister?
What else can you describe it as? It's also so incredibly pathetic, the fact that the great shift, the great I'm listening move, as the Defence Secretary's moved places, was this, 0.1% uplift. He is the sort of 0.1% Prime Minister, someone who really thinks in decimal places on a spreadsheet and not really about the bigger picture. And I think particularly if you think back to his speech that he gave outside of Downing Street announcing his timetable for his departure, the fact that he included reintroducing Britain on the world stage, retaking our place on the world stage, and yet this was one of the many things that precipitated his downfall. It just shows that he is such a fundamentally unserious person. Yeah. He liked going to the summits, he liked mugging for the photos, he liked signing the communiques, but when it came to doing what has basically become, in effect, the bare minimum for rearming in a much more dangerous era, he couldn't do it, because all of this was about bean counting and moving things from one thing to the other, and also running scared of backbenchers who would much rather we continued to ensure that a 21-year-old who's feeling a little bit anxious, and probably the best thing for them would be to get back into work, they would rather maintain that. Yeah. Person's
or give it to an asylum seeker. I mean that's the reality, isn't it? Just does not get it. And the fact that, genuinely, when I saw the story yesterday that apparently he was really hoping to get a nice big world stage job after leaving, after in such glorious circumstances, after his incredibly long term in office. Remember, Andy Burnham announced his 10-year plan yesterday. Yeah, 2 years ago we had one of those from Keir Starmer. I remember saying at the time, that's not going to happen.
Boris Johnson did that as well, didn't he?
I know. Everyone's got, don't announce a 10-year plan. I've got like a 10-minute plan, NATO Secretary-General, genuinely laughable. Proper spit your tea out, laughable nonsense. This is the thing. Every former Defence Secretary, or of every different stripe, the former Defence Secretary who he asked to actually do his, strategic defence review, George Robertson, who was the former NATO Secretary-General, who has been scathing about Keir Starmer, but a former Labour man who knows about defence, on every possible level, who does your review and tells you need to spend this amount of money, and you ignore him. Every former Defence Secretary, every senior military person, head of the army, former chief of defence staff, everybody, to a man and a woman, are saying we need to spend a lot more on defence. And the figure that seems to be the key thing is £28 billion more. So we spend 65 billion right now, but another 28 billion more over a 3 or 4 year period. Bare minimum. Just to stand still in terms of our ability to defend ourselves. But we can't defend ourselves right now, so standing still isn't an option. And as I keep pointing out to people, in 1938, when Neville Chamberlain was Prime Minister, negotiating, in Munich with the Munich conference with Adolf Hitler, we were spending around 7% of GDP. Obviously, a lot smaller amount in those days, much poorer country, but 7% of GDP on our defences. And, while we were at peace, well, 3 years later, 3 or 4 years later, we were spending 50% of our GDP. Wars are really expensive. Your main aim in life should be avoiding going to war. And the best way you avoid going to war is that classic American president statement, you speak softly, but you carry a big stick. Well, we don't have a big stick. We've got a little twig. And it's already broken and bent. And frankly, we can't find it because it's probably sitting in port somewhere because it's not fit for the sea, etc. I mean, it really is scary. And as JK was just pointing out, if he had any political nous, which clearly Keir Starmer lacks completely, otherwise he wouldn't be out in his ear within 2 years of starting office, he would have announced a massive increase and then gone to Burnham, you cut it. This is my legacy.
Yeah.
But he didn't even have the guts to do that.
Yeah, something which would have been the right decision for the country, and also might, if he wanted to be a little bit spiteful on the way out, would also create a headache for Andy Burnham, who's not interested in these areas whatsoever, even though they are very much interested in him if he ends up becoming Prime Minister.
Yeah.
But I think this is the thing about Keir Starmer. He's someone who doesn't have any genuine political nous or insights. He's someone who also, despite his protestations to the contrary, is not a competent technocrat by any stretch of the imagination.
That's what we thought. That was what we thought. It's not very exciting, but we could do with a little bit of just calm and boring, wasn't it? Remember, the grown-ups in charge.
All he's done is trash his own reputation. So the idea that he's going to be elevated to the NATO Secretary General or some position in the UN or whatever it is he might be eyeing. I mean, he'd be lucky to be treasurer of his local golf club at the end of all this. I mean,
genuinely, I wouldn't let him mop the floor in the kitchen. I've got to be honest with you. Well, it's interesting. I mean, defence. No mention of defence whatsoever in Andy Burnham's speech. We took it live on the show yesterday. Now, here's the big difference. I've got to say, I can actually bear to take an Andy Burnham speech live, which I have to say really struggled with Keir Starmer. I always said, I had to tape them on the Skybox because I couldn't. Everyone's having the speech in the afternoon. I have to tape it. God, because I want to keep it for posterity. I'll put it on a podcast and listen to it to help me go to sleep at night. No, but genuinely, I'm like, well, I'm going to have to talk about this tomorrow, and I can't do more than 5-10 minutes before tuning out because it's just so awful.
Keep having to skip back.
Yeah, we're just like, okay, what did he say? I mean, and then you discover he hasn't said anything anyway.
Exactly.
And that was interesting from Andy Burnham. I mean, look, he's a good speaker. He's pleasant to listen to. I really need him to dump the black T-shirt. It's beginning to really pee me off, that is. He vowed to rewire Britain that is stuck in a rut. There was lots of fine words. As far as I can tell, he has identified the two key problems in our country. One is we don't build enough council houses, and the other is we're run from London and not from Manchester part of the time. Extraordinary revelation that he wants to set up this, he said in his speech, this number 10 North. Big cheers in the room, from a load of people who are hoping to get a nice, cushy public sector job in Manchester. But also, revelation last night from our good friend of the show, Dan Hodges, that he plans to basically work part-time in London and part-time in Manchester and stay in his Wigan home, not move to number 10 Downing Street. I can understand not wanting to move to the number 10 flat. He's got a family, wife and kids have got a life up in Wigan. But that doesn't work. London is the capital city of our country. It's where the levers of power are. And it's not going to change. It's where the city is. It's where it's where the money is. It's where the power is. It's where this is a nonsense. All they're going to do is just add this massive extra layer of bureaucracy, humongous amount of first-class railway fares. They better improve the Wi-Fi on Avanti West Coast Main Line, better they? I mean, it's nonsense, isn't it? If those are his two big ideas, we are absolutely up a creek with no paddle.
It's a gimmick. That's all that it is. Listening to that speech, you realise that essentially gimmicks is all that he has. I know that given how awful and painful and soul-destroying it was listening to Keir Starmer over the past few years has been, that Andy Burnham almost looks better by contrast. But he really is as unimpressive a figure. I mean, this is a man who spent 20 years in Westminster and is now posing as an outsider. This is a man who bangs on constantly about being from the North because he has absolutely nothing else to say. He confuses wearing a T-shirt with being a man of the people. Meanwhile, the North votes for Brexit. He wants to overturn it. The grooming gangs is a scandal which unfurled on his watch as Manchester Mayor. He had absolutely nothing to say about it. This guy was a joke last time he ran for the leadership. He was asked by Mumsnet what his favourite biscuit was, and he said chips and gravy because he wanted to be so authentic. He's a complete phony. He's a complete fraud. The only difference is that he can give a slightly better media interview. But given the hole that this country is in, surely we should expect better than this.
Well, has he done any media interviews? I mean, he doesn't take any questions after he announced, or he did a speech after he won Makerfield. The whole thing. Oh, I'm running for Makerfield. I'm not doing stuff about being PM. I'm just running to be a local MP. No, okay, but then no interview afterwards. No media questions. No media questions yesterday. Yeah. First big speech. Again, people could say, well, there's plenty more that there are more speeches to come, but okay, fine. But what you choose to say, this is all about the economy, what you choose to say in your first big set-piece speech tells us, you get no mention of defence, no mention of immigration, no mention of cutting welfare. Three of the biggest issues for voters and three of the biggest issues in terms of our economy. No plan quite clearly to dump net zero. That ain't happening anytime soon. Well, if you're not dumping it in net zero, your dreams of reindustrialising Britain, good luck with that. Even getting the big tech and AI. AI uses extraordinary amounts of electricity. They're going to have to. AI firms going to build their own nuclear power stations if they want to have reliable electricity, because we ain't going to be able to provide enough. It's utterly madness. I'm genuinely disappointed, because here's my thing. Although just cannot bear Keir Starmer. I always thought it would be an awesome man, but as I said in the day he was elected, I want him to do a good job. Yeah. I'm not party political. I vote. I always vote. I feel very strongly about lots of issues, but I'm not tied to anyone. I will vote for the party and the leader I think they can get the job done at the time that it needs to be done and has the right priorities. But whoever is in power is the Prime Minister of my country that I love and I care about and I want to do well. And there are an awful lot. There are millions of people in this country who need a Prime Minister to be good, because it impacts their daily lives, their ability to get a job, their kids to get a decent education. People like me, who are well enough paid, good lot in life, we'll manage either way. Oh, you can put my tax up, but we'll manage either way. But there are millions of people for whom a failing government means it fails their lives. So it does matter. I want him to do a good job. I want him to be a good PM. I want him to surprise me. I like the guy. He's actually a very likeable, sociable guy. I think someone who just speaks human is a good start. But there was nothing in that speech yesterday that made me think, oh, great, OK, he gets it. He gets it. Yeah, fair enough. There's nothing in there. No,
there was something about it which felt entirely detached from reality. You would think that we were in entirely different political times, that the country's finances weren't in the hole that they're in, that we weren't living in a much more dangerous era. Also, fundamentally, that, yes, the cost of living is something which is straight up at the top of the agenda. But first of all, you hear nothing that would genuinely address that. You just hear kind of hints at more welfareism and social housing. But also on the questions that
hope and change.
Hope and change. If we hope and think and just be optimistic, then we will see this growth in every postcode in the country. It was just very much trust me, believe me, it'll all be fine. It's not good enough. And it's also not good enough on the fact that the issue of migration continues to roil the country, exactly as you say. Nothing in there. And what we're getting from the insider reports is going to soften up what were already pretty soft reforms from his own.
Let's just get onto that before we go to take a break and go to calls. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary. I know so many people who keep saying to me, do you know, I had really good hopes for her. I think she's very... No, seriously. Again, perfectly nice person. She's Labour through and through. They believe in open borders to all intents and purposes, this Labour Party. What can you do? Her big plan now is she's going to be publishing this new immigration asylum bill today. Asylum seekers will be forced to repay hotel bills. They're asylum hotel bills because, of course, you're put up in accommodation, you're not allowed to work. I think after a year, then you can be permitted to work. If you're unrealistic, you're going to be deported within a year, blah, blah, blah. They'll have them working. This is an absolute load of utter tosh. It's going to be means tested. Now, after 8 years, all the studies very clear. David Shipley, who's a regular on the show, has done the numbers, crunched those numbers. After 8 years, only 1 in 5 asylum seekers are in full-time work of any sort at all. Most don't work at all, or if they do work, they work, odd hours here and there. The average pay of those working full-time, so 1 in 5, is £13,000 a year. So, that's below minimum wage. So I don't see how they're working full-time for a start. There's no way in the world you're going to be getting them to be paying any percentage of £10,000. The admin alone for this will cost more than any money they're going to get back. It's a load of absolute nonsense. But if you haven't paid back the money, then you can't move into having indefinite leave to remain. But you can just say you can't get indefinite leave to remain anyway. Yeah. It's an absolute nonsense, and it's a smokescreen, and it's being reported. You see it on social media, the BBC, the ITV and Sky reporting this asylum seekers forced to repay their hotel bills. I'm telling you, if 4 asylum seekers repay a single penny of those bills, I will be very surprised.
And also, it's completely missing why people are angry about this issue. It was like when the government and the previous Tory government as well were running around mainly preoccupied with the issue of using hotel space. The issue is people are not incensed purely because of the fact that the hotel at the end of their street is now not open for weddings and bar mitzvahs. Although that does annoy me. But the fact that it's because of the fact that the issue is that the border is broken. The issue is that people are entering the country illegally. The issue is that you don't have to wait more than a couple of days now to hear a horrendous story of someone who entered precisely the country illegally and has committed some kind of heinous crime. Whether or not you move them into HMOs, whether or not they, at one point one of them pays back some of the hotel bill that they racked up, is completely sideline. It's almost like side issue. It's
they're deliberately not getting it, aren't they? I mean, also,
but who is this going to impress as well? That's what I don't really understand.
I mean, also, on the left case, the Green leader, he's still going. He hasn't crawled back under his stone. Zach Polansky. He said, the only reason this is outrageous. You're punishing people for being asylum seekers by definition. They're allowed to stay there. That it's because they deserve to be here. And in his recent tweet saying, if they were allowed to work, this wouldn't be the problem. Yeah, let's just let them all work. Meanwhile, by the way, 83 asylum seekers are moving into new build homes on a village estate in Stoke Heath in Shropshire, meant for social housing. Of course it was. 250 grand these are each worth, and they've been given to 83 asylum seekers as opposed to local families. If they think this story is going away, they can think again. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any and all that we are talking about today, whether it's defence, whether it's anti-Burnham, whether it's asylum seekers repaying hotel bills that they never repay, anything and everything. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. We'll take your calls up next. Lots of top guests coming. More from Tom Slater and from me. This is Talk.
Burnham just drove through there on his way to the palaces of Westminster to be sworn in as an MP and, of course, on his route to number 10.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
There was two things on that manifesto. One was a picture of Keir Starmer and the word change. Well, promise made and promise delivered in that sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home and Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:26 is the time. Keir Starmer, remember him, is due to speak in Berkshire. Unveiling his defence investment plan that we've just been talking about. I'm going to guess there are going to be flags. Should we take a punt? Let's have a little bet. Tom Slater's with me. How many Union Jacks do you reckon will be behind him?
Oh,
I think 4.
I think 5 or 6. I think they'll also be in the full Union Jack suit, you know.
That would be good.
That would be a really nice touch, I think.
That would be good. I like that. But, we took the decision to take a bit of Burnham yesterday, and then we ended up taking the full half hour. Because I thought, you know, first major speech, man who's going to be our Prime Minister, and he's listenable to, whether you agree with him or not. You're not basically, you know, throwing things at the radio. I can't. I've got to be honest with you. My little treat to myself, we're not going to take Keir Starmer live because I can't.
Not for old time's sake.
I don't think my nerves. I don't think my nerves will
My
cope. I mean, I don't want. Look, I've got a cream jacket on. I don't want to have my ears bleeding down the cream jacket. You know what I mean? Yes. Shall we go to your calls? 8344 488. I hate him. I don't think it's possible for me to convey how much I hate Keir Starmer. I'm kind of. I don't really hate people. I find it hard to. I find it hard to fathom in myself what it is about
I know
him
exactly
that I
what
hate
you mean, but
as
what
much.
is he's so dull? I
know you shouldn't be able to hate someone that dull,
yeah.
and yet I do. Anyway, sorry, I'm using up your call time. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Matthew is in Warrington. You want to talk about defence? Good morning to you.
Hello, Julia.
Hello,
Great to speak to you again.
And you.
You're on fire today. You know, you was on fire yesterday. That last interview was outstanding.
Oh, you're very kind. I mean, apparently she thought it went well.
I loved the bit at the end when you said, "I believe you should be in prison."
I mean, I do. I genuinely do.
Oh, it was brilliant. So anyway,
you're very kind.
So on Saturday, I went to Wrexham. It's Armed Forces Day, but my regiment, the Welsh Guards, they always hold a memorial for the Falklands lads.
Yep.
And they did an unveiling for the Afghan and Iraq lads there, so it was a great turnout. And it was a great day all round. And then I was chatting to a serving officer who was a platoon commander. He's now a high-ranking officer. And we were talking about the state of the military. And he said to me, Matt, he said, listen, he said, we are responsible for 50 theatres of war in the world as a British military. He said, do you know how many we could actually respond to if it kicked off? I said, I don't know, sir, go and tell us. He would be lucky if we could do 5. He says, we're basically turning into a defence force for the United Kingdom. We're not deployable.
No.
We've got no money. Our troops, we've got no equipment. He said our Air Force, our Navy is gone. It's grounded. We have not got a Royal Navy. He said it's shocking how much it's changed.
Yeah.
He said it's not just this government. He said,
it's gone on for years. We can't just blame this government.
And he said, but the way it is, he said, you know, we've gone very woke. He said having the women in the battalion and stuff is really hard because of the fitness levels and trying to keep it all going. He said
but there are times when it's not appropriate for women to be in certain roles or men to be in certain roles, but that is a role where you need people to be physically strong, and men are more physically strong than women, full stop.
Oh, yeah, you know, when I was in Ireland, we was walking around with 80-pound burgers on our backs, carrying GPNGs, rounds, search kit, and climbing over fences, going through fields, knee-deep in mud. And any woman who can do that with me, then fair play to them, but it's hard going.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we're 6-foot guardsmen and not 5'3". You know, that's why you have all these problems. But yeah, the army is goose. It's like everything. It's like the National Health Service. It's like the years and years they just creamed it and made it so difficult. And it's sad to see because there was the boys that were there. There was some, you know, the Afghan lads which I met some last year, and you see some of the injuries that they've got, and they've got a big smile on their face and they're proud to say. But we all said the way it's gone, especially since Afghanistan, it's terrible. We've got no equipment. It's awful.
And it was bad enough then in terms of.
Yeah, so a more divisive person you couldn't meet. That broadcast yesterday, when he name-checked his friend from the BBC, has made 40% of the country irrelevant because Manchester is now running the country.
Yeah.
The reality is, if he is on a train to Manchester and Russia challenge a plane or invade, he cannot look after the country.
Well, I mean, look, Prime Ministers travel, don't they? I mean, you know, they all travel. It's just if he's planning to just be doing it, you know, 4 times. It's silly. It's just nonsense.
What value is that to one of the girls that was raped in Rotherham? Nothing.
Yeah.
And you know what? I was with someone who's a leader of a major supermarket this morning, and he said it's the indecision we can't deal with, and he's baked in indecision. Do you know who his biggest competition is?
Who?
It's not reform, it's the markets.
Yeah.
And Widdicombe said it. There's something of the night about that man.
Oh,
And
I don't get that.
there is something. I know he's all lovely and touchy-feely, but there's something about him that just doesn't hang right. And as Clint Eastwood said, Mr. Carpetbagger, we got something around here called a Missouri boat ride. And his Missouri boat ride will be the markets, because they're going to destroy him between now and September.
Very interesting. Andrew, thank you very much indeed. 10:33 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking to, Tom Stage, you might have heard this guy, Brendan O'Neill, political writer and author at Spiked Online. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Dan Jarvis, the new Defence Secretary, no doubt may well stay on as Defence Secretary when Andy Burnham, as very likely, becomes Prime Minister on the 20th of July. He's introducing the new Defence Investment Plan. The DIP, Prime Minister is going to be speaking in a few moments. A stronger, fairer Britain is what he's standing in front of. I have to say, big red screen, can't see any Union flags. We got that wrong, didn't we, Tom? But I'm afraid I just... Keir Starmer's going to speak in a moment. I can't do it. I just can't listen to the man today. Let's talk to Brendan O'Neill. I definitely want to hear from him. He's a political writer and author. A very good morning to you, Brendan.
Hi, Julia. How's it going?
Very well indeed. I'm trying not to cough, so I'm going to come straight to you very quickly. I can put my cough button on. First of all, let's talk about Andy Burnham and that big speech yesterday. What did you make of it?
I mean, it sounded good, didn't it? There was lots of buzz phrases and nice, friendly speak, changing politics, making things better, hope in every heart, all that kind of stuff. But there was very little detail, as lots of journalists have said. There was very little meat on the bone, and that's going to raise a lot of questions. Also, this whole thing about moving north and shifting power around, I mean, that's all well and good. I don't mind if politicians spend a bit more time in Manchester alongside London. That's all fine. But if they're going to be doing the same stuff that they've been doing for the past 20 or 30 years, then it will make no difference whatsoever. What people are interested in is not the geographical location of our politicians, but what they're going to do to improve the country, to repair the broken borders, to get rid of the net zero lunacy, to trim welfare, to make things better in a meaningful way. That's what people want to know. They don't want to know where Burnham's going to be put.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? It's all very sort of performative, isn't it? And again, there's a major issue. The seat of power is number 10. It's where you've got connections, but, it's where you're close to the Cobra room, the equivalent of, White House sit room. You've got, all the other departments there. You can access people quickly. It's about quick communication. I mean, seems to me this is all a cunning wheeze so he can basically work from home. We're going to have a Prime Minister on Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. The first work from home prime minister. Or, he should make Downing Street his home. It's not a bad place to live, is it? I agree with that. People often say we're too London centric. Let's be honest. London is by far the biggest, most powerful city in this country, one of the biggest, most powerful cities on earth. It is the beating heart of political life in this country. That's not necessarily a problem. Anyone who's walked down Whitehall will know that this is where the seat of power is. This is where all the great offices of state are. This is where people make decisions that impact on this country and in some cases on the world. Manchester's a great city. I love Manchester, but it doesn't have that same power. So
well, there is saying he wants to bring it to him, but that just doesn't. You can't have lots of different centres of power. And I know we're a very centralised country, very unusually for a lot of countries, but that's part of our history. One of the things I think is absolutely fascinating. Lots of talk yesterday from Andy Burnham about devolution and having local decisions made by local people. But what he actually means is, local bureaucrats and local politicians. Why, if he thinks that Westminster is so darn useless as it is, and Whitehall are making decisions in the centre, that these people who are living in Leeds, Bristol, Manchester, wherever, are going to miraculously be so much better, I find fascinating, especially when you see devolution in terms of driving the economy and representing what people really care about. Wales, Scotland have had huge amounts of devolution. How's that working out for them? Plus, this is a man who thinks that devolving power closer to the people is a good thing. And yet, he would long-term like us to rejoin the EU and have Brussels making decisions about Britain. It's not even coherent.
No, it's not coherent at all. I'm very sceptical of devolution, I have to say. I know it's presented to us as this empowerment of local people and local regions, but that's not how it works out. It usually is about dispersing power to, sharp-elbowed bureaucratic types in those parts of the country. It doesn't empower ordinary people. I mean, Scotland is the classic example. When Scotland got semi-autonomy as a consequence of the devolution drive, it became a pretty tyrannical country. It wasn't very free at all. It didn't respect people's freedom of speech. It followed all the woke lunacy, for example, putting rapists in women's prisons.
Yep.
Some of the politicians there were pretty corrupt, judging by what's been happening in recent months. So devolution, I think, it can often be a way for a prime minister to avoid accountability, who actually disperses power across the country, which can make it harder to hold him to account. But people have got questions about how this country is being run, what its future holds. We want to know who we can pin that on and who we can put pressure on. And the more they disperse power, the harder that becomes. Well,
indeed. Also a lot of talk. And again, this would have sounded really nice, wouldn't it? Let's end all the division. Let's have more unity. Let's not have a Westminster that's set up for conflict. That sounds lovely. A lot of people will say, and he was saying, less arguing and more doing. Tick, tick, tick. Love hearing all of that. But of course, it ignores the fact that in a democracy, the arguing and the conflict is part of the battle of ideas. It's part of what democracy is, which is, different people, different parties competing, saying, this is what we think the priority should be, this is what we think we should aim to do. And also, even if we all agree on what we aim to do, like everyone wants growth, this is how we think you should do it. Well, this is how we think you should do it. And that battle, that competition for ideas is how Western democracies have been, the powerhouses in the past that they've been. And if you want to have unity and everyone agreeing, you have to go and live in a dictatorship.
Exactly. Contestation is the lifeblood of democracy. Argument, disagreement, having a scrap, ideally not physically, but certainly a kind of mental, moral scrap over the future of the country. That is democracy. That's democracy in action. I'm really wary of consensus politics or any kind of happy, clappy message, because it's often about putting a lid on real disagreements. And it's often about putting a lid on the public's disagreement with the political class. And we saw this over Brexit. What we've seen over the past 10 years is that there are massive divisions in this country over constitutional matters, matters of power, democracy, and so on. That's what Brexit brought to the surface. The idea that you can just bury that beneath these feel-good slogans, it's not going to work. So that's the thing that worried me most about Burnham. He thinks he can drag us into this, consensual era and bury democracy in the process.
Yeah, indeed. He sort of betrayed an idea that he wasn't really very serious, didn't have any big ideas. And this is the big worry, that apparently his team are scrambling to put together a programme of government, not having expected they would be, able to take power on the 20th of July. They're not ready. I mean, he's been trying to get a seat in Parliament since January. First of all, Gordon and Denton didn't get that, and then getting Makerfield, but apparently he didn't have a plan for when he got into Parliament, becoming Prime Minister, what he would actually do with it, which is extraordinary. And what was, I think, most telling was not what was in that speech yesterday. A broad speech on economics, yes, but he seems to think that, building more council houses is going to solve everything, a bit of renationalisation, but no mention really of defence, nothing on the ballooning welfare spending, nothing on tackling immigration, nothing on, dropping net zero. He wants to reindustrialise, but he thinks he can do that while we've still got net zero policies. If you don't talk about those key four things, I don't think you're serious about turning the country around.
Well, that's it. Those are the issues that are playing on people's minds. The defence of the realm, having actual working borders, a state that knows who's coming into the country and why they're coming into the country, and a state that takes seriously economic growth and the resuscitation of manufacturing and the creation of our own energy sources. These are all things that people want. They want us to be an independent nation, both in terms of our borders, in terms of energy production, in terms of who we are as a country. And Burnham didn't have much to say on that at all. And if he is going to put Ed Miliband as his chancellor, which is the rumour, then I don't think we're going to get any kind of forward vision economic discussion at all.
I think that's genuinely terrifying. I mean, genuinely worrying. Kemi Badenoch yesterday, she keeps getting in a lot of trouble with Labour for her comparisons with their, comparing Bridget Phillipson to the Gestapo, saying she's a spiteful class warrior. Yesterday, she said Ed Miliband, if he was Chancellor, would be a disaster for Britain, comparing him to a Nigerian military dictator.
I'm quite liking Kemi Badenoch.
Rather good fun
that she's coming out with. She's turned up the spice level, which I think I quite appreciate. And it's a nice counter to Burnham's idea that we should all just get along like kumbaya. No, that's what politics is about. It is about calling out the people who run the country and sometimes maybe even insulting them. I think that's all fine. But, there is a question mark over all of this, Julia, which is the question of where Burnham got his mandate from. Now, I know we are a parliamentary democracy. We vote for a party. We don't vote for a prime minister. So I don't necessarily have a problem with a new prime minister coming along halfway through. But when you come along and say, I'm going to radically change the country, I'm going to overhaul power itself, I'm going to move the seat of power to a different part of the country, you can't do that kind of stuff without the consent of the people. Yeah. That's overreach. And I think that's why we're going to need a general election sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I just don't think they're going to be looking to that. And again, I can already see the sham rubbing off. And things like refusing to take questions from journalists, pretty much since he's won the Makerfield by-election, certainly at this big set-piece speech, getting all the journalists to traipse up to Manchester and then just dashing out of a back door, not taking any questions. He's already upsetting the journalistic class. And people say, journalists don't, they don't get the be-all end-all, but they are the ones who effectively are representing the people. We don't get to go up and have a chat to him after his speech. They're the ones who are supposed to hold him to account. Just finally, I must ask you, the Prime Minister is now speaking about defence in Berkshire, the Defence Investment Plan, finally long announced, and we know why he's done it, because he lost a Defence Secretary and an Armed Forces Minister over the amount of money. This is his last act. He thinks it's a legacy. I mean, if he thinks this is a legacy worth being proud of, I mean, he's an absolute embarrassment. But it's interesting that Dan Jarvis, the current Defence Secretary, saying, paying tribute to the Prime Minister, speaking for a few minutes first, then Rachel Reeves. I mean, it's like putting the band back together. And now the Keir Starmer saying that, I kid you not, the UK is facing a dangerous and volatile world, and then somehow thinking that this tiny little increase of 2.69% of GDP, way below the NATO targets, way behind other countries in Europe in terms of their spending on the defence, is way below what the defence chiefs and former defence secretaries have said, and his own strategic defence review said that the country needed. He thinks that's his political legacy. Doesn't that tell us everything about the man?
It's just laughable. If he thinks that's his legacy, that is, then I worry for his mental faculties, to be honest, because that is insane. The first job of a government is to defend its citizens from harm. And I'm afraid to say that this government and previous governments have catastrophically failed on that front. They haven't protected our borders. We know that lots of people have come in who have committed heinous crimes against British citizens. Defence goes beyond having the right weaponry and the well-trained young men and women. It's also about a sense of safety in the nation, borders being secure, people in the country feeling safe. On that front, Keir Starmer failed terribly, and that will be his legacy, that failure.
Absolutely. Always good to talk to you, Brendan O'Neill, political writer and author. Tom, he's your mate, he's your colleague. Any comments?
You'd be surprised to hear that I agree with much of that. But
you guys don't always agree at Spike.
No, exactly. There's always a bit of healthy disagreement, but I think where Keir Starmer and the history books are concerned, I think he will be remembered with a mix of bemusement and pity, which is a terrible situation to be in. It's one thing to be thought of as malign.
Yeah.
It's another one to be thought of as so weak and so ineffectual.
Who threw away a majority of 170.
Which is not nothing. Yes,
oh, my God, you're kidding me.
I mean, the things
he could have done anything he wanted to, pretty much.
And what did he do? Warble on for 2 years and then get into scraps with his backbenchers and leave us all much worse off for it.
Well done, Keir. Again, I'm not taking him live because whatever he says isn't worth listening to. We'll give you a little summary in a moment because, again, I like myself too much, I like you too much to impose that on us. We've only got a few more weeks of this nonsense from him and then he can be gone forever. Up next, we're going to be talking to someone I definitely want to hear from, and that's Roy Lilly. He's a former NHS Trust chairman, about that junior doctors' pay deal, another one, but also why NHS maternity units are in such a bad state and need a complete overhaul. This is Talk. Burnham just drove through there on his way to the palaces of Westminster to be sworn in as an MP and, of course, on his route to number 10.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
There was two things on that manifesto. One was a picture of Keir Starmer and the word change. Well, promise made and promise delivered in that sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:50 is the time. Keir Starmer is speaking, unveiling his defence investment plan, but as it's not worth, frankly, much of the money it's worth. It was also for 15 billion quid. Nothing like what we actually need. So we'll get some quotes from him in a couple of moments. First up, though, let's talk about what's going on in our it's always R, isn't it? Our NHS with Roy Lilly. He's a former NHS Trust chairman. A very good morning to you, Roy.
Julia, good morning.
Thank you for joining us. We've got yet another pay dispute settled. This time it's the resident doctors, junior doctors as were. They voted to end their strikes after accepting, well, more than half of them in a ballot, accepting a pay deal that will see the most experienced, this is not all of them, but the most experienced will be paid more than £100,000 a year. They're ending the strikes after voting in favour of a 6.6% pay rise. And that's basically over 2 years, an extra 1.7% next year. And this comes on top, of course, of that massive, what was it, 26% pay rise or 29% pay rise they've had previously. It's a good thing if strikes are over, but what's to stop them just doing what they did last time and coming back 3 minutes later for another pay rise?
Nothing really. I mean, they could vote. I think, I don't know, if you look at the numbers, I think there was a 57% a vote to stop striking. So it's, I mean, that's...
So a load of them weren't happy with this.
Yeah, it's kind of tight, isn't it? Really too tight to interpret it one way or the other.
Well, no, it's not. It's 57%. I mean, it's a good majority.
Well, it is a majority. And if you look at the statement that BMA came out with afterwards, they're still sort of saying, well, we think there's some more to go and all the rest of it. I think I saw it really both ways. I thought either they'd settle this because they probably, both sides just needed to settle it. They were fagged out with it. Or they would try and spin it out and see what Burnham would say.
Yeah.
Only a few weeks, but
I think he'd be a bit of a soft touch, as we knew Wes Streeting would be when he was Health Secretary, because he came in and he goes, well, we're going to sort out this pay deal back in 2024, and then within weeks, handed them exactly what they wanted.
Yeah, so I mean, their strategists, I think, from the BMA's point of view, have probably made their wrong move. But listen, it's over for now. The NHS can get on with it. I mean, these doctors who are going to earn these extraordinary amounts of money, actually, they're probably senior registrars.
Yes,
because
exactly.
Junior doctors until they become a consultant. So it's very misleading.
I know, and I do think it's unfair. I'm also intensely relaxed about people who are very, very highly skilled, doing a very difficult job, earning a lot of money, and bearing in mind what a lot of the managers are earning in the NHS. It seems perfectly reasonable. And if we want our brightest and our best, straight A stars at A-level, top universities, working, in difficult, conditions under a lot of pressure. I don't see why they shouldn't be rewarded with a good salary. And we've still got that problem where people think they're junior doctors, they're inexperienced. You could be junior doctor, a resident doctor now for like 10 years. The person, operating on you is likely to be one of these doctors.
Yeah, and you don't really want to lie on the operating table thinking my operation is going to be done by the least paid person who could do it. So,
well, also, and that the tube driver, if it's a London hospital, the tube driver driving him in was paid more than him or her. I mean, which is what the reality was. I mean, listen, look, all very well if they don't come back for more, but they do keep coming back for more. And again, the only reason they can get away with this is because we need the doctors and because there are fewer of them than there are nurses and other staff. But let's talk about also the other big story that's been around for the last couple of weeks, and this is what the hell is going on in our maternity units. We had that report by Donna Ockenden, senior midwife, particularly into Nottingham University NHS Trust, and 500 plus women and babies harmed, stillbirths, babies dying as newborns, 6 mums dying as well. I mean, clearly things going horribly wrong in Nottingham. Not the first, definitely not the last maternity unit with problems. And now we've got a report out today by Baroness Valerie Amos, and a national inquiry looking into the whole of the NHS maternity system in England, not just this one hospital in Nottingham, saying it's not set up to deliver consistently safe, high quality and compassionate care. She found unacceptable racism and discrimination embedded within the system. And as a country, we cannot continue like this. She recommended 8 key changes to overhaul the system, including the appointment of a maternity commissioner whose one aim was to deal with dealing with maternity care. Is that the solution?
Well, look, there's an interesting undercurrent with it. This is the sort of latest report we've had on maternity. And frankly, you and I could have written this report based on all the other. So there's nothing new in this, but Donna Ockenden has said yesterday, and she knew what was in the Amos report, said yesterday that more regulation heaped upon the shoulders of clinicians and others is not the way to resolve this. And Bill Kirkup, remember him, who did the inquiry into the East Kent maternity problems and any other places, a highly regarded guy. Has withdrawn from the Amos report and said he doesn't endorse the findings. Fundamentally, he's had a row about natural births. Now, Bill Kirkup, I mean, just to recap this for the listeners, viewers, there's a whole policy strand about what is a natural birth and how with midwives handle it.
When you say natural birth, basically whether or not you intervene, do C-sections, and midwife-led units have largely been pushing this, I'd say, political agenda, which is that, you know, do it normally, do it naturally. You don't need to have intervention. And actually, there's very clear evidence that this is causing babies to die.
Yes, if you can. Natural, if you can, if you will intervene early. Now, Kirkup has said this consistently. I interviewed Kirkup several months ago, and he actually said it to me then. He was concerned about that. And, of course, he's withdrawn over this quote natural birth thing, which Amos this morning has dodged and said, oh, it's just a different wording. It's not. It's a difference over the fundamental aspect of the policy. So I think Amos really, rather than solving an issue, she's probably kicked off another argument.
That's very interesting. And again, I feel very strongly. Don't have it at birth. Don't go to a midwife-led unit. Be in a major hospital where you can, with people who can do what is necessary to keep you and your baby alive if something goes wrong, as it really quite often does in births. That's what's so extraordinary. People seem to think it's a birthing experience. It's not. It's getting everyone out alive and healthy experience, in my view. Sod the whale music and the candles, people. That's not the music you're going to listen to. It doesn't matter at all. Being alive and healthy at the end does. But it is extreme. Why? This is the thing I still can't get to, and I know we've spoken many times about this before over the years. I can't understand why, if you work in the caring profession, I mean, surely one of the most rewarding jobs in the world must be being a midwife, and these wonderful moments in people's life, giving birth to a new healthy baby. Why are they not trying to do a good job where, as many people as possible come out healthy and alive? What's stopping them from doing that?
That's the question that Amos hasn't answered, and neither of the 14 other inquiries answered, really. I talk to midwives, and they're perfectly decent people who had to work to create a memory. As much as a birth, they create memories for families, and they're very good at it. There's a whole load of issues around this natural birthing thing. It was a really strong policy strand that was endorsed by the Royal College of Midwives, the RCN, were in two minds about it, I think, to be honest. But it was a strong policy push. Ministers didn't want to get themselves involved with midwives. You take on the midwives at your peril. And I think the whole thing has just kind of drifted. Now, somehow or other, we've got to pull it back. Now, whether or not this new post of the co-chair of this new committee, it's a co-chair with the Secretary of State for Health. Really? What's the point? If you were the Secretary of State sitting next to you and you're the co-chair, who's going to get their way at the meeting?
Yeah. And again, do we know even if James Murray is going to continue as Health Secretary? I think most people couldn't. If I said right now, who's the Health Secretary, wouldn't even be able to name who it is. Does it make a difference? Thank you so much, Roy. We'll have to leave it there. Time's against us. Roy Lilly, former NHS Trust Chairman. I'll get Tom Slater's thoughts on that in the next half hour. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. A lot of calls on the board. A lot of you want to get in touch about the Defence Investment Plan, finally published. Prime Minister is speaking right now. That's why we're not taking it live. We'll talk more about the detail there. Tell you what he's been saying. Is his last major act as Prime Minister effectively treachery, giving the UK only half of what it needs to defend itself? Your reaction to that, give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number for you to get in touch. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk with a Home of Common Sense. Fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, I'm very, very grateful for your company. If you missed anything from the show, go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing the long-awaited Defence Investment Plan, which has just been published and just announced by the Prime Minister. Remember him? Keir Starmer, still around, just for a bit longer. He says it's going to keep Britain safe and secure long into the future. In reality, though, it is many billions of pounds short of what is actually required to keep us safe. Plus, we're going to talk about that big announcement from Andy Burnham yesterday. He wants to run Britain effectively, part-time in London and part-time in Manchester. The leadership front-runner, only leadership contender so far, said a new number 10 North would be the nerve centre of his government. How's that going to work? Are we going to have government by Zoom now? And a Pakistani grooming gang ringleader convicted of 30 child rape offences since leaving prison cannot be deported despite being stripped of his British citizenship because he has given up his Pakistani citizenship. Pakistan don't want him, and because he's been here since before a law that allowed him to be deported if he took away his citizenship, he misses that by a couple of years. So we're stuck with him, walking the streets after being convicted of 30 child rapes. He carried out thousands of child rapes, but he's been convicted of 30, and for some bizarre reason is not only out of prison, he's actually free and still in our country. I'm sure we can all come up with ways of solving that problem, can we not, if the government can't? Delighted to say that joining me throughout the show today is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Morning. Morning again. Thank you very much. Thank you very much also for putting up with during breaks and the coughing and the sneezing and the...
Like I'm in a petri dish.
Do you know what it is? It's when your teenagers come back from university. That's what it is, bringing their student infections with them. Thank you. Anyway, let's talk about...
as long as it's not meningitis or whatever we should be fine.
No, I'm happy. It's a cold. I'll take a cold. I will take a cold, absolutely. Let's be thankful for small mercies.
I'm not sharing vapes in this studio. So
no sharing vapes in this studio. No snorking. No snorking in night. Yeah.
I've told you several times.
Yeah, exactly. He did make a complaint. Should we talk about serious stuff?
Probably should.
The Prime Minister has been speaking, which is why we've not been taking it live, because as I explained in the last hour, I just can't anymore. I don't have to anymore. He's almost gone.
You'll miss him when he's gone, I think.
Do you think we will?
Because it was kind of fun. You know, he was a sort of walking joke.
I don't. I mean, I've been given a load of...
We'll be a bit wistful about it soon. Sure.
The Prime Minister has been speaking after the Defence Secretary, who's paying tribute to him, and Rachel Reeves, very kindly has given us some money. It's our money, love, our money. Dan Jarvis, the Defence Secretary, so far, he said that Starmer made tough decisions on defence. Bearing in mind, Dan Jarvis is he's a good man, he's ex-military himself. He's only in the job because John Healey resigned, because the Prime Minister refused to give enough money to basically make the country safe. Not the view of just John Healey. Literally anybody who knows anything about defence, and indeed the man who carried out the Prime Minister's own Strategic Defence Review, Lord Robertson, former NATO Secretary-General, former Labour Defence Secretary, now Labour peer, didn't listen to it. But the Prime Minister has now said his defence investment plan would make the British Army 10 times more lethal. Just a lie. We'll build an army Shall I do it? That's 10 times more lethal with attack drones. A lot of money, I think 5 billion for attack drones. Alongside our Apache helicopters, a new fleet of surveillance drones collecting intelligence, finding targets, and a surge in low-cost one-way attack drones, which have proved so effective in Ukraine. No, it's not 5 billion, it's way less than that for that. Long-range missiles, armoured vehicles, counter-drone defence system, new technology, capabilities, money for our commandos and special forces, 150 million to raise our defences against the threats of AI. All sounding fine, but he says the Polish public are increasingly concerned about rising threats. No, there are rising threats. It's not just a perception of ours. And he says European nations must take more primary responsibility for their own defence. These are the changes and challenges... Jesus Christ. These are the changes and challenges that have defined my premiership and will continue to shape our times. I mean,
That's a very strange form of words, isn't it?
I mean, it really is.
He's not saying he's tackled them or overcome them or put us on a better path. I had to deal with this. And
I failed. He thinks this is his life. By all accounts, he was desperate to get this defence investment plan out. We've been waiting over a year for it. Basically, Defence Secretary was in a battle with the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, trying to get enough money for us to actually, be able to defend ourselves. 28 billion quid was what everyone agreed was what we needed to basically keep going.
Yeah.
And we're looking at around 15 billion. Looks like there's been an extra, billion and a bit more than John Healey resigned over. The idea, that makes a difference. Oh, right, well, now we're safe. So the defence budget is going to be £80 billion by 2029, and it's currently 65 and a bit billion. So, I mean, that's what we're spending. But this is up to apparently they've been saying 2.7%, 2.7% of GDP by 2030. The NATO target, just 5 years after that, is 3.5%. That's not going to happen. Apart from the fact it is going to happen, because we're all going to have no choice about it when Russia starts their full-on sabotage and cyber attacks, which they are clearly planning to do. And that the Prime Minister himself, about a month ago, told his NATO colleagues was what they expected from Russia, and by 2030. We are not going to be ready to defend ourselves.
Surely not. And you would think that he would realise that particularly if he's on the way out as a Prime Minister, there might be a bit of room to do something a little bit bigger. There might be a bit of room to both measure up to what we've pledged to and what is expected of us.
He should have really gone for it, shouldn't he?
It would also sort of lay a bit of a trap for Andy Burnham. It's like, right, you're going to have to find the money for this now, Sunshine. So, you can forget about, putting, recreating Number 10 Downing Street in the middle of Manchester or whatever it is that you want to do.
If he'd announced, right, 28 billion... There you go, Burnham, find it. Or you're the one who's going to cut the defence budget. But again, he's still playing politics. These are the people who accuse, Tories and Reform for playing politics, with when there's a, the Henry Novak case or Southport or whatever it is, or Asylum hotels or accused of playing politics. He's playing politics with defence of the realm.
Yeah.
The first job of government to keep us safe. He's playing games.
He's playing games. It's almost worse than that. It's just a sort of performance. Why is he giving this speech? It would have been in the diary. It will get him out of the house. That's nice for him. But there is no serious new levels of investment here. It's a bit more change that he found down the back of the sofa. And we all know that this isn't going to measure up. So essentially, this is just something to occupy the Prime Minister before he does eventually step down. And because his authority is already shredded, no one's really listening. You're not even taking it live for good reason, not just because he's boring, it's always been boring, but because of the fact that this is piddling and coming from someone who's on the way out. What's the point? And I think that's the issue where Keir Starmer is concerned. He would always present himself as so serious. I'm a statesman. I am someone who, unlike those Tories who were just running around making fools of themselves and us and tearing lumps out of each other, this is what a serious person looks like. It's not. It's always been a sort of charade from beginning to end of someone who's been way in over his depth, but still likes to play act at being a serious statesman.
Yeah, indeed. Well, he's saying that this £80 billion spending a year by 2030, by 2029, he says that means the UK will be spending 4.2% of GDP on defence by the end of the decade. He's called it a huge historic shift for our nation. I'm thinking we're all hoping with a steely focus on growth that our GDP will have grown, in which case that won't be 4.2% of GDP growth. I mean, that would put us not far behind Poland's spending on defence and above Germany's, and they are on a massive rearmament programme. I find those stats somewhat hard to believe, I have to say. There's no doubt at all that Keir Starmer is feeling the heat of the sort of the wonder boy from the north, from Manchester, Andy Burnham. In terms of this, he wants to sort of leave his legacy. I mean, we know this is not a legacy, but I want to hear from you. Give us a call because this is not what the UK needs to defend itself. It all sounds good, but it's not enough. It is not enough. What is your reaction? Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. That threat from Andy Burnham, well, I mean, it's a real threat now. I mean, reality is, Andy Burnham is going to be the next Prime Minister, whether it's on the 20th of July or if suddenly Al Khan's or someone else appears and says they've got the numbers. Doesn't look very likely that is going to be the case. But Andy Burnham's first, we were discussing the last hour, first big set-piece speech. He didn't take any questions, I don't think he's taken a single journalist serious question, has he, since he's become the MP for Makerfield. OK, it's only a week, but you're going to be Prime Minister in a few weeks, mate, on the 20th of July. I don't think that was a good move of his, but he basically seems to think that the biggest issue in this country right now is that we're too focused on London, we need more devolution, and that he's going to run the country half from Manchester, living in his home in Wigan with the family, and half from Number 10. There's going to be a Number 10 North, and if we can end all the disunity and the division, then everything's going to be great. I mean, it's a lovely idea, but I do get the urge to just sing Kumbaya, Kumbaya around a fire whilst toasting marshmallows. I'm not quite sure I heard anything in those 30 minutes plus of him speaking that suggested how he was actually going to do it and how it was going to improve anyone's life.
Exactly, and even on its own terms, it wasn't exactly the most inspiring vision. I want to see growth in every postcode. Who doesn't? But this isn't.
No, it wasn't growth. Good growth.
Good growth.
As opposed to the bad growth.
Exactly.
We hear so much about.
I don't know.
I don't know what bad growth
Powered
is.
by fossil fuels. I don't know. What is he talking about? Good growth makes you feel good. So it would be good, socially responsible forms of business which are propping up. Everyone will work in Lush or something. I don't know what it is that he's got in mind.
Don't start with Lush.
It was just sheer platitudes, really. That's not good enough. And talking about, we're going to move the centre of power up to the north, it's a gimmick. Even when Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, they tried to explore the possibility of being able to live in their London residences whilst they were running the country. And you
can understand that. The rich men got nice homes.
Exactly. You know, it's just a car ride into work or whatever. Even that, they soon realised was impossible because of the fact that you need to be in the room. You need to be accessible at all hours of the night. This is really basic.
And if you ever want to see your family, they need to be close by.
And also, you know, Andy Burnham,
It's not a part-time job.
It's not a part-time job.
If you want to be Prime Minister, I'm sorry, you're going to have to live above the shop.
And also, Andy Burnham was in government in the Blair and Brown years. He knows all of this stuff. It's just because it sounds kind of nice and people... It would give some people.
Well, there's like Keir Starmer saying he was going to clock off at 6 p.m. every Friday.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that. Mind you, probably country would be better run if he just clocked off about 10 a.m. on a Monday.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. The less he was involved, the better, I suppose. But and then the rest of it is, again, it's warm words for an intended audience, but I don't think there's anything serious there
the audience was definitely, you know, Labour heartland, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There wasn't anything else in there. I mean, it was an extraordinarily thin speech for your first major speech on the economy. You want growth. Again, everyone wants growth. How are you going to do it? Building council houses. And again, great, OK, we do need to build council houses. I don't think anyone should be allowed to buy their council house. I don't think people should be allowed to have lifetime tenancies in their council house. I always find it absolutely extraordinary. Well, why should someone have to leave their council house because they had a council house for when they had a family of 4, but it's just them, but it's their home? Sorry, my parents sold their family homes and downsized when they no longer had kids at home. This is completely... If you choose not to do it, if you live in your own private home, that's your choice. But millions of people do that. You know, why would I want to be in a big house when, you know, pay all the heating bills and have all these rooms I'm not using? I'll go to a house that fits the size of, you know, the family I'm living in. But the idea that when we've been paying your subsidised rent all these years in the council place, that you should have a right to keep your home, I find absolutely extraordinary. But they shouldn't have been sold off, and there shouldn't have been a ridiculous thing where, when they were sold, that money wasn't allowed to be spent on building more council homes. But the idea that building more council homes is a solution. Bear in mind, by the way, that Andy Burnham, his big thing is that he regenerated Manchester. Very little evidence, very scant evidence for this economic boom that Manchester supposedly had. But also, you know, if you give a property developer 400 million quid of taxpayers' money, and then you can build a load of properties with apparently, as is often the case, a fraction of the socially affordable housing that was promised. It never actually comes to fruition. But, you know, there isn't any, you know, no one can, there are barely any people available to build the homes. I mean, they're already behind on their 1.5 million homes they were planning to build anyway. You've still got the planning problems. Oh, great that Labour are trying to turn those around, but they haven't yet.
Yeah.
The government is slow. You pull the lever and nothing happens, whether it's in Whitehall or Manchester. We haven't got enough trained labourers, haven't got enough brickies, haven't got enough plasterers. You try getting one, you try getting a builder. The cost of materials is absolutely huge and limited. I mean, you know, the idea that, we're just going to shove up a whole load of, you know, councillors, and he's talking about the biggest in the post-war, since the post-war era. So he's talking, what, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands? The only thing that's going to make a difference is hundreds of thousands. Well, who's going to build them?
Yeah.
What are you going to pay for it with?
And that's where I think his pitch around devolution also comes into it, because of the fact that you just shunt that responsibility, or more of the responsibility, over to the metro mayorities or over to other forms of more localised government. And that's part of the problem, is that when you hear politicians say the answer to all of this is devolution, we think that local decisions should be made more locally. All of that sounds absolutely great. The issue is that a lot of our problems are very national in nature.
Yeah.
The fact that the planning system is a mess is because of nationally applicable legislation. The borders, obviously, national issue. The fact that we don't have any economic growth because of all kinds of different policies that have been pursued, budgets
net
which
zero.
have been net zero. This is not something that, if you allow, say, Metro Mayoralty to have a few more powers around council housing or benefits,
that's
going to
make a massive difference.
Of course not.
And again, there's no. But Andy Burnham didn't do anything to turn around the NEETs, the not in education employment, youngsters in Manchester.
But
massive growth
parts
in
of Greater Manchester where there's huge numbers of young people who are just put out to pasture. I mean, this is just not too far away.
I think you'll find, as his speech, they did a ring round and they got 1,000 trainee schemes or apprenticeships. I mean, like, are you kidding me?
Exactly, and they've got a publicly controlled, not even publicly owned bus network, and a bunch of skyscrapers that have gone up because of investment that was secured well beyond before he was ever mayor of Greater Manchester. This Manchesterism thing, it's just branding, it's PR, it doesn't mean anything, but he's still expecting to roll it out all across the country.
I'm just utterly fascinated that, I completely accept the abject incompetence and slowness of bureaucracy in Whitehall. Oh, yeah. But, my local council, Camden, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, it only took, 4 months to get some planning permission for some trellis. I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just, I think we had a basement well, which was just replacing another basement well that had to be dug out because it was basically collapsing. And I think it took me 3 years to get the planning officer. I'm prepared to pay 1,500 quid for someone to oversee it from the planning department. It took 3 years of emails every month to get someone to actually turn up, to sign it off, to inspect it, to then sign it off. 3 years. And I'd paid for that visit, effectively. I mean, but yeah, absolutely. Local government, they're going to sort us out. Yeah. Because the one thing I think we're all really aware of is local government is just full of really dynamic people who get stuff done. I mean, that's literally the feature. When you think about your local council, those are the people that get stuff done. I mean, are you kidding me?
It's just buck passing, though, isn't it? It's kicking the issue over to another form of government. This is the thing about devolution. It's just become a way for politicians to nationally to avoid responsibility and accountability.
Well, as was devolving down, but also devolving back out to Europe.
Exactly. We don't want to make decisions. That's kind of essentially the political class.
I don't know why you want to be Prime Minister if you don't want to make decisions.
I just think they're insubstantial. I mean, the Metro Mayorities were made for someone like Andy Burnham, who was knocking around government, sort of mid-ranking minister, not particularly impressive or not particularly substantial. Given how terrible the alternatives are right now, given how within the Labour Party, given the fact that a whole kind of layer of politicians have been cleared out during the Brexit years because they were found wanting or tried to thwart the vote or what have you, he suddenly emerges as, by contrast, a more interesting figure. But he's still very much that kind of mid-ranking, cabinet-ish minister who, really should have never been able to do much more than be a sort of figurehead metro mayor, and yet now he's going to be Prime Minister. None of us voting.
Your animosity towards Andy Burnham, which I don't share, actually, is well, it's not quite matched by my loathing of Keir Starmer. But there we go. Let me ask you just...
He's also cringe, which is what upsets me.
There is a bit...
Stop making Smith's references and New Order references and whatever.
And jokes about his shorts.
Just stop it.
Yeah.
You're not endearing yourself to anyone with this.
Put a shirt and tie on,
Six
mate.
music.
Put a shirt and tie on. I'm quite old-fashioned on this stuff. What do you make of this junior doctor's pay rise? They've done another deal. Nothing to stop them going to go for another one in a few weeks' time. But the top doctors... But again, we're talking about people hugely experienced and highly trained, carrying out very difficult work, could hit £100,000. But basically, did the junior doctors, resident doctors as they are now, did they give up because actually they finally got the pay they wanted? Or do you think actually they realised they simply do not have public support? And, I'm really aware when we do have these doctor strikes, we are not covering it, I think the last 10 barely even touch on, like mention it on day one maybe, but actually it's not causing the uproar anymore. People are going, we just expect you to be on strike now. It doesn't have the same impact anymore.
It really doesn't. If you think about the then junior doctors, strikes way back when Jeremy Hunt was Health Secretary, even then you saw very high levels of public support for the action. It takes a hell of a lot.
Like 70% or something.
It was huge. It takes a hell of a lot for the public to turn against, particularly people who work in the NHS going on strike. Generally speaking, they're on their side. Generally speaking, they presume that the problem is the fact that the Health Secretary and the Treasury are being penny-pinching and not paying them what they deserve. The way in which the junior, now resident doctors, have turned the public against them is pretty remarkable.
Well
and it shows
played.
just how much they have pushed the boat out at the expense of what is reasonable or going to generate any level of public support.
You didn't get a chance to come back after we spoke to Roy Lilly about what's going on in NHS maternity services, but we got latest report from Baroness Amos. This follows the Ockenden report. I mean, it's just another report all the time telling us how bloody awful our maternity services are. And we are talking about babies dying, stillborns, newborn babies dying in their dozens in just one hospital in Nottingham University NHS Trust. But this is happening across the board, mothers dying, and this is inadequate care. And it's interesting that Roy Lilly pointed out one of these issues is this sort of maternity-led units. And it's a very political view, this idea we should have natural births. And we did have this thing where, too posh to push, didn't we, where women were going in and getting caesareans, before they were due date, opting to have them. I don't think it should be an option to have a caesarean, as if you don't need one. I mean, I think you're quite wrong. I mean, the health... But it's very, very, very clear that actually your baby's health is going to be massively improved by going through a natural vaginal birth. There's something that happens to the body and the baby in that process which clearly makes a difference to their long-term health, immunity and everything. And it's scarce NHS resource. And also I think most women have no idea about quite how difficult it is after caesarean. But there has been this really strong political agenda about, natural is best. And not giving caesareans when they are needed. Babies are necessarily getting brain damaged or dying, and this has been a political agenda, and this has not been addressed by Baroness Amos.
No, it hasn't, and I think it's one of those reminders of just how much the health service is failing people. Like, we're expected to want so much. Gratitude in a health service which is supposed to be sort of cradle to grave, and yet at the cradle end is causing all kinds of absolutely horrendous
going to the grave
stories.
rather too quickly.
Well, this is it, and just I think we've become accustomed to just assuming that whatever crumbs we get from the table from the NHS is just what we've got to put up with. It can and should be better.
In other countries,
it
is.
Exactly.
It's as simple as that.
Stories like this are a reminder that even on the most basic thing, you should expect that if you're pregnant, or your wife is pregnant, or your daughter is pregnant, whatever, that they're going to receive a requisite level of care that won't put them or their child
it doesn't
at
seem
any
too much
level of threat.
I find it extraordinary also these accusations of of racism. Unacceptable racism and discrimination. So, midwives sort of treating, if you're Asian or you're black, you're this, I mean, some of the outcomes for women of ethnic minorities actually are down to a higher likelihood to have other issues, often related to obesity. A lot of a higher proportion of Asian and Afro-Caribbean women in this country are obese, and once you've got obesity and you're pregnant, you have a shed load of extra health issues and concerns for the baby. So that part of its outcomes is accounted for by that. But I find it very strange, this whole, we're all clap for the NHS and nurses are angels and everything's all, and midwives are, angels are the angels. But apparently a load of them are really racist and horrible and don't care about babies dying. It's very difficult to hold these two ideas in your head at the same time.
It's also very difficult to hold that idea in your head at the same time because of the fact that vast swathes of the NHS workforce is quite diverse. Again, how many different forms of racism are we talking about?
It's utterly bizarre, isn't it?
Maybe just the problem is that the care is awful. Not because of the people working in it, because of the structure and the system that we've become accustomed to.
Is it the NHS structure itself and the failure to deal with problems? 11:26, I'm grateful for your responses to that. A lot of you want to get in touch about Andy Burnham and his speech, but also about that defence announcement. Is it going to be enough to keep our country safe? I mean, the short answer is no, but it's certainly being built up by the outgoing Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Burnham just drove through there on his way to the palaces of Westminster to be sworn in as an MP and, of course, on his route to number 10.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
There was two things on that manifesto. One was a picture of Keir Starmer and the word change. Well, promise made and promise delivered in that sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk Home and Common Sense. 11:28 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Jules is on the line. He's in Bedford. Jules, you want to talk about this defence investment plan. Long awaited, you finally got it. What do you make of it?
So I think the issue.
Wait a second, Jules. Are you doing the washing up or something? What was that noise?
I don't know. I've got clear as a bell on my end.
Oh right, okay. You're not on speakerphone, are you? Can you get straight on be on the main line rather than on speakerphone? That'd be really helpful.
1 second.
Oh, okay. Who let him be on speakerphone?
What was that noise?
What is going on? Jules, we're going to come back to you. Let's go to Davy in Edinburgh. What's going on? Davy, you want to talk about Andy Burnham and this plan for devolution, don't you?
Yeah, two quick points in Burnham and one quick point in the bench.
Yeah.
Burnham, this is future-proofing itself from responsibility.
Yeah.
Because when it goes belly up north, or whenever it goes belly up, he's just going to say, well, listen, I've given you the power.
Yep.
Nothing to do with me. So he's
Yep.
absolving himself of responsibility on all sorts of levels there.
Absolutely.
The northern thing, the devolution thing,
Yep.
to me, that seems like a constitutional change,
Yep.
which was never in a Labour manifesto. Therefore, that should call for the general election.
That is a very good point, and yet, as Brendan O'Neill was making the point earlier, that's the thing. We don't have a presidential system. We elect our local MP, and the leader of the biggest party in Parliament forms the government. So we don't have I don't think we have a right to demand it. Mind you, Labour shouldn't have demanded it when Tories did it. But as you say, he needs to be sticking to the manifesto commitments that the government was elected on.
Yeah. The other quick point was the defence fiasco.
Yeah.
I take it these thousands upon thousands of drones that we're going to be making, we're going to be buying microchips for the guidance systems from China.
Oh, damn. You make a fair point. Don't a lot of those get made in South Korea? Not South Korea, in Taiwan.
Yeah, well, could that be taken over by China?
Well, that's the concern. I mean, that is the big issue. I think 95% of the highest level of these chips are made in just this one country of Taiwan, which is one of the reasons why we need to keep Taiwan safe. Or maybe we can start doing it ourselves. No, that's a very good point. Do you think that this is a great legacy for the Prime Minister?
There's no legacy. There's just not got a legacy.
How would you sum up his premiership?
Mediocre at best, complete failure.
Yep, I mean, I'm with you.
Failure.
I think you're being kind, to be honest with you, Davey. Thank you very much indeed. Frustratingly, we can't get in touch with Jules. I'm desperate to know what was going on there. But let's talk to Richard, who's in North London. Hello, Richard. You want to talk about Burnham, don't you?
Yeah, because, Julia, I think the worry here is that actually, we've seen this before, this guy is blaring Birkenstocks. So it's kind of an updated, or it's a creepy image. But this is not new. This is just saying this is socialism, but it's different socialism. And the trouble is, I think what's sad about this is that it's a very long time since we heard anything different. People often say that we've had anemic growth since the financial crisis, but actually it's a lot worse than that, because to find 4 years when we had growth of over 3%, you've got to go back to the 1980s.
Oh yeah.
So it's really.
It's been going on for a long time. It's interesting. It's interesting actually. You can pretty much date it back to mass immigration.
Well, and the thing is, what was different about Thatcher was she really believed in free enterprise. She really believed in capitalism. And what worries me about the politicians that we've had really since she's gone, really all of them, is that they don't. No. They talk about everything else. Now, the thing is, Julie, it worries me because I think we need to get... a complete rethink. It worries me that on the right of politics, I do think we've got three parties. I think really all three of the leaders are unelectable, and the parties look increasingly, our parties look increasingly chippy and angry. But the point is, Julia, there's a way out of it, and the way out of it is to go back to what worked in the 80s. So, for instance...
The world has changed since the 80s, though. The economy's changed.
Yes, but far too many people go to university.
I agree with you on that.
And what worked for Thatcher was the enterprise allowance scheme.
Yeah.
Basically, people were paid a little bit of money, but they were working in enterprise, and you could update that.
Yeah, I know. Look, there are lots of things that I think she did very well. I wasn't a fan of her at the time. I've learned to be, but I have to say, people also forget she also had huge sums of money coming into Treasury coffers from North Sea oil, which even if we reopened every single oil well and gas well in the North Sea, we wouldn't see anything like it. You know, that was when it was at its peak, and that money, I'm afraid, I would say, was squandered rather than we see what like Norway did. So there are a lot of things that, you know, she benefited from it, and I think she gets credit for some stuff that actually was more down to that side of things. But great call, Richard. So appreciate that. Really thoughtful. Thank you very much. Jules, if you can get back in touch, we'd love to hear from you. Plenty of the calls on the border in the next hour. First up, then, we're going to take a break. Then we're going to be talking to Lord West, Labour peer and former First Sea Lord and Chief of the Naval Staff. What does he make of the Defence Investment Plan? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:36 is the time. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, is still with me. Get his thoughts on what my next guest has to say. He is Lord West. And West is a Labour peer. He's also the former First Sea Lord and a former Chief of the Naval Staff, and joins us now to discuss the Defence Investment Plan, the long-awaited Defence Investment Plan, which has finally been published and announced by the Prime Minister to much fanfare. Very good morning to you, Lord West.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Well, look, he's now saying that we're going to be spending by 2029 £80 billion a year on defence, up from the current £65 billion a year. Apparently, this is an extra 15 billion quid a year. Now, the thing is, it was 13.5 billion was what was on the table for John Healey, which he said didn't touch the size of what was needed to keep this country safe. So he resigned a few weeks ago. He also said basically that 3.5 billion of that wasn't really real money, it was an accounting trick. So is this extra £15 billion a year that he's now given his new Defence Secretary, Dan Jarvis, in the Armed Forces, is this enough to protect the country?
Well, it's not enough, and it's backloaded as well. It's not up front. And it's
as in, we're not going to get it spent today, tomorrow. It's going to be at the end of the
Absolutely.
decade.
I mean, it's always good to get a bit of extra money because extra money is needed. But the reason John Healey went, and I have to say I have a lot of time for him, I know him quite well, was because he was very concerned of the safety of our men and women today.
Yeah.
Because actually equipments are not being maintained. There is not sufficient training going on. All of the boring, mundane things that trundle on were not being done, and the money wasn't there. Now, they've found a little bit of extra money for these early years, but it's not enough. And of course, the thing that, for example, they released about the Navy was, oh, we're going to have these ships which run drones, and we're not going to buy the new destroyers. To be quite honest, I almost couldn't care about that. This is 10 years away. If you look back 10 years ago and think what has happened in the past 10 years, to say, oh, we're looking at something new, possibly, I hasten to add, because it's on the drawing board and hasn't been done in 10 years, that's trying to make us not pay attention to the things that are wrong within the review, which of course should have come out a lot earlier.
Well, indeed. I mean, again, the Strategic Defence Review was carried out by Lord Robertson, who's a man who absolutely knows his stuff, former Defence Secretary, himself former NATO Secretary General, appointed by Keir Starmer, who was then basically ignored, saying there's not enough money. But this is it's not about what we can do in the future. It is our ability to protect ourselves now. The Prime Minister himself said only a few weeks ago, told fellow NATO members that our intelligence and security was saying, realistically, we could face a proper serious threat to our security here in Britain from Russia as early as 2030. But we won't be ready to defend ourselves in that scenario, and we haven't been ready even to defend, our naval base in Cyprus. That was it, HMS Dragon, the Type 45 destroyer, wasn't actually available. None available. Eventually left 2 weeks later. We have the French defending our naval base, for goodness sake. We simply don't have the equipment to protect our men and women in harm's way, or to defend our allies and our interests around the world. What sort of sum do you think would be necessary? Because this £28 billion rise a year is what has been talked about. Is that the sort of figure we should be looking at if we want to take our defence seriously?
Well, that is a figure that the Chiefs of Staff, with all their advisors, came up with as needed to rectify the problems within our military at the moment. So I'd guess that it's fairly accurate. And the closer you get to that, the better. But I think, Starmer, I'm afraid, Mr. Chance, let's face it, he is frightfully boring and dreary and a sort of, a lawyer. But he really missed a chance. He could have grabbed this issue of defence.
Exactly.
And he said, oh, look, he said all the right words. He said them to NATO as well. Yeah. NATO are not going to be happy when he doesn't come up with the goods that he's talked about. He said all those things. Then instead of coming back and saying to his Chancellor, right, I've now said this to NATO, we need to do it. There's a real risk to our country. Take the action. You find out where the money comes from. It's going to be painful, but we're doing it. He didn't. He let the Treasury and the Chancellor go back and say, oh, well, we can't really do that. Let's cut it down a bit. Well, he is the first Secretary of the Treasury.
Yeah. He gets to decide.
When I was captain of my ship, I didn't let the second in command come and tell me what to do. If he had, he'd have been overboard. So, I mean, I think he missed a chance there. And it rather reflects some of the other things in his premiership, I'm afraid. Yeah. Where, okay, he's steady, reliable sort of chap, dreadfully boring, he did a lot of U-turns. The government effectively did actually do a few things that ticked along. There were some slight improvements, then the war in Iran came. But generally, pretty dreary stuff, actually.
Well, indeed. But again, this is the thing. There's always going to be competing demands for taxpayers' money and money that huge amounts of money we borrow. We don't have any money. We're massively in debt, massively in deficit. But, there are some things that just matter more than others. And the reality is, when it comes to funding defence, it's not really a question of, well, what have we got left to fund the drones and the destroyers and the jets and the men on the ground. It's what are the military threats to us, or the cyber threats, what are the threats that our country faces and our interests face? What do we need to protect ourselves from those threats? And then you need to find the money. I mean, he's kind of got it the wrong way round, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, I think they identified in the SDR the things that needed to be done, but they've very much failed in the short term with maintaining. Well, let's look, for example, at attack submarines. Nuclear attack submarines, are really, really potent weapons. Yeah. The Russians are scared of them, and we used to run them right up into the up north of the Kola Peninsula, into the Barents Sea, giving the Soviet Union a really hard time up there. One of the reasons, actually, they finally folded as a Soviet Union. Yeah. And there we are. We've got these modern submarines. for a long, long time now, not a single one of them has been operational.
Yeah,
They're
just
new.
extraordinary.
I mean, it's outrageous. And you, as you say, deploying one destroyer to Cyprus took 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, Margaret Thatcher and the Navy in those days sailed a carrier battle group, an amphibious task force, 20 destroyers and frigates, 6 nuclear submarines, and went and knocked the hell out of the Argentinians. They did that in 4 days. They sailed them. Something has gone grotesquely wrong.
And what is it? Because even when we do spend the money, even if it's, pound for matching pound and for pound equivalent in France, France spends, it's been spending roughly a similar amount of money, but gets a lot more bang for its buck. We do have a problem with procurement, don't we? Have also a problem with different defence secretaries, different, civil servants changing the contract, and so something that you've planned to be X suddenly is X plus Y plus Z. The costs mount up, the delivery time mounts up. We insist on having stuff that is newly developed instead of here's something off the shelf that we know works. We've got those Ajax armoured vehicles, which apparently have got a major problem in them that makes everyone sitting in them sick, so they're unusable in the battlefield. We have fighter jets that couldn't fight and couldn't take off. We keep making these mistakes. Where is it going wrong? Or does Andy Burnham have the solution, which is if we only could devolve the decision-making to someone in Manchester to procure our defence, everything would be fine?
You've thrown a lot of things in there. I mean, the bottom line is that the bottom line is we have had problems with our procurement, and at times it has not been good and it's too slow, and we need to sort that out. But it's not the worst procurement in the world. And saying we want to be like the French, I mean, yeah, okay. I'm not sure about that.
Not like the French, but they're getting the same bang for our buck.
I'm not as bad as Nelson was, who used to say to all his officers, he said, he used to say, love God and hate Frenchmen like the devil. Well, I'm not quite as bad as that, but we need to be a bit wary, I think. But we do need to do something about it. We have to spend it better. The Treasury, of course, always use this as a stick to beat the MOD with and say, we're not going to give you extra money because you waste. Well, actually, if you look at other departments, look at the glories of HS2, When it comes to Burnham having things done in Manchester, good-o, but actually Manchester's got about, and the Greater Manchester area has probably got about 3 million people. London and the area around London has got 18 million, and I'm sure the 18 million will love being told what to do by them. And in Yorkshire, they've got twice as many people as in the Greater Manchester area.
Yep.
I think they'll be very pleased.
That's not going to go down well.
I think there's going to be all sorts of fun going on.
Indeed. Coming back to specifically what the defence budget is spent on, a lot of our budget does go on things like our nuclear deterrent, which again is a nuclear umbrella, along with France's for the whole of NATO, for the whole of Europe. It's something that they benefit from as well, and it's hugely expensive. And again, classic thing that basically we've got something we spend a fortune on, which hopefully we will never have to use. But there's a lot of focus on technology, on AI, a lot of focus particularly on drones. The drone warfare, the drone technology that's been developed during the Ukraine war is, we're talking, Star Wars stuff, aren't we? Do you worry, though, that as is often the case with our procurement, we're always procuring the stuff to fight the last war as opposed to the next war?
There's always a danger of that. And of course, you did make a very good point when you started speaking there about the nuclear deterrent. The deterrent is immensely expensive and takes a huge chunk of our defence budget, a huge chunk. I believe personally that the capital cost of the Dreadnought class, a new deterrent submarine, should be covered from central contingency because it's not a war-fighting weapon. If it's a war-fighting weapon, we're all stuffed, to be quite honest, because we don't fight wars with it. And it's a huge amount of money. What that means is the amount of our defence budget left for conventional deterrence, spent on conventional things, has been too little for years now. And that is part of... So you absolutely...
But our allies benefit from the nuclear umbrella that we provide.
Exactly. And they don't... Most of them, apart from France, don't have a nuclear umbrella. So they're just paying on conventional defence. And if you don't have sufficient conventional defence, then deterrence fails and you move rapidly up. And what you don't want is a tripwire where you go from chaps shooting each other with a drone to thermonuclear war. That is a real worry.
On that happy note, Lord West...
I want to know, Julia, why is it I'm all red-faced and look tatty, and you look so smart? And I think your people have jobbed the cameras.
We should send the makeup girls down to you. I'm sure you'd love that. Lord Alan West, they work magic on me. You see what I look like beforehand. Thank you so much, Alan West. Always good to talk to you. Labour peer, former First Sea Lord and Chief of the Naval Staff. Tom Slater, listening to all of that, your response?
Well, I think it's just a reminder of what a tremendous own goal this was from the Prime Minister. There was actually a lot of goodwill towards him, even from various parts of the defence world and the military and so on and so forth. Hope that he might have seen sense. People thought John Healey was a good egg, all the rest of it. But as ever, it all comes down to Treasury brain, penny pinching, and a Prime Minister with so little authority. He couldn't drive through something that he knew was the right thing.
Absolutely. If you know it's the right thing and you don't do it, then you have absolutely failed. If you don't think it's the right thing, you absolutely failed because you don't get it. There we are, madness. Let's go to a quick break. Up next, going to be talking to a grooming gang survivor, Ellie Reynolds, about this latest. These stories break my soul. A grooming gang ringleader convicted of 30 child rape offences, gone to prison, not for long enough because he's still alive and out of prison, but now walking our streets. Why? Well, because he can't be deported. Why not? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Old news. On to the next. There we go. That was Andy Burnham just going through there on his way to the palaces of Westminster to be sworn in as an MP and, of course, on his route to number 10.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
There was two things on that manifesto. One was a picture of Keir Starmer and the word change. Well, promise made and promise delivered in that sense.
Lara Bird. Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:50 is the time. Ellie Reynolds joins us now. She's a grooming gang survivor and campaigner. A very good morning to you, Ellie.
Good morning, you all right?
Thank you so much for joining us. I want to talk to you about this case because this is, I'm just spitting tacks about this and I can't imagine how infuriating it would be for you. I'll just go through some details for people who don't know this story. This is a Pakistani-born grooming gang ringleader convicted of 30 child rape offences. That means he's committed thousands, but he's been convicted of 30. He got sent to prison. He's a key figure in the Rochdale grooming gang scandal. His name's Shabir Ahmed. He's now 73. He's due to be released from prison this week on Thursday, But he can't be thrown out of Britain because of a loophole in the Immigration Act of 1971. He was stripped of his British citizenship while serving a prison sentence. He was sentenced as a prison sentences totaling more than 40 years, but of course they're served concurrently instead of consecutively, so he's only served a fraction of the time. He was jailed in 2012 and he's already about to come out. He's protected from deportation because in that act it exempts Commonwealth citizens, Pakistan of course being in the Commonwealth, who arrived in the UK before 1973 from removal. Extraordinary. And as he arrived before 1973, he's lived here long enough to qualify for exemption. So it means we're going to have thousands of pounds spent by the Ministry of Justice and Probation Services for exclusion zones, curfews and tagging restrictions to protect the public. Ellie Reynolds, I mean, this just adds insult to the injury that the girls who were abused by a man like him have to face, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think from my perspective, you're all finally seeing what we've put up with for years behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And this isn't the first case, and I don't believe it'd be the last. And we're still stuck on perpetrators have more rights than young British white girls that were born here. Why?
Yeah, exactly. And again, apparently the government's been negotiating to get Pakistan to take him back. But my thing is, well, fine, he's given up his Pakistani nationality because, of course, he knows then he won't be sent back to Pakistan. But my thing is like, well, sorry, we're going to give it you back. I mean, we're going to put you on a plane. Not our problem anymore. And if you can't be sent back to Pakistan, then you don't come out of prison. It's up to you. Those are your two options. But I think the thing that blows my mind every time, and we see this when we see these grooming gang, the gangs, it's always, a gang on trial, and then we're told, this gang in Rochdale or Rotherham or Manchester or wherever it is, they're serving 250 years or 130 years between them. But the actual sentences they get are pretty pitiful given the scale and the extent of the crimes that they've committed against children. Gang rape repeatedly of dozens and dozens, even hundreds of children over years. And they end up spending 12 years behind bars. That's about sort of half an hour for each gang rape. That's not even a punishment.
No, definitely not. And I think from, everybody never really gives consideration that the girls end up with a life sentence mentally.
Exactly.
The thing is as well, they're in prison and it's still being paid for by our communities. It's still, they're still being funded. They're still pretty much getting away with it in there. It's not as if it's like prisons like it used to be, is it? They're quite happy in there. They're quite comfortable. And how certain are they that this man isn't going to come out and re-offend? Because all they've done there by releasing these schemes is put more girls in jeopardy from perpetrators that are as vile as that. 30 convictions does not say for definite how many he's done.
No, it's a fraction.
Going to continue.
That's probably what he did in a month. From your, just tell us just briefly, what you can at this time of the day, your experience, the scale this is on.
The scale that this is on, if I had to talk about it, I would be sat here for days.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's not, people say, it's a grooming gang, and I think that's very lightly put for the stuff that we had to endure. And it's, it's trafficking of children, it's torture of children, it's sexual abuse to children. And I think the key word in that all the time is children.
Yeah.
We don't have a voice.
Yeah. But it is just extraordinary, the sentences that are being handed. Could we have a deal in this country where, after a certain number of child rapes, you don't come out unless you're in a coffin?
I agree, and I don't even think it should be past one. I don't even think it should get to one. I think we should be that strict, that it's not got to one. Never mind 30, and then we're going to release you freely, and you're a free man to go and rape and abuse plenty more girls if you wish.
And again, and we know, as happened again and again and again in every town and city across this country, although according to Sadiq Khan, not in London, that these men were protected by other men in their community, wives, and no one speaking up, local councils, police, no one doing anything, social services. Whatever protections are supposedly around him. And he's 73. He's still pretty able-bodied at 73. He is a threat to children. He's going to be back on our streets. I do not trust that the public are going to be protected. I do not trust that young girls are going to be protected by this man.
No, definitely, I agree.
It is mind-blowing, isn't it? What would you say to the Prime Minister as he still is right now, in terms of, or indeed, the Secretary of State for Justice, David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister, what you think should happen to this man who we're told can't be deported?
Well, for starters, I wouldn't even agree with the can't be deported. It doesn't matter how long you've stayed in this country. The minute that you touch a child and abuse a child, it does not matter. You can go back to where you came from, because we do not want rapists roaming our streets and putting our children at risk. Yeah. As for the Prime Minister, I think it's very embarrassing that the girls that have been through everything that we have raise more awareness and do our jobs at protecting our children a lot better than what he ever could.
Yeah, and he was a former Director of Public Prosecutions. Are you glad to see the back of him?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What about Andy Burnham, though? A lot of the grooming gang campaigners and survivors from Manchester area have said when he was dragged kicking and screaming into some sort of local inquiry, it was, very light touch, and he did not give it much support.
I think with the Prime Minister situation, if we thought we had it bad with Starmer, we better buckle up for Burnham.
Oh, very telling. Well, we'll talk to you again about that. Ellie Reynolds, a grooming gang survivor and campaigner, I really appreciate you joining us. Tom Slater, listening to this one, spoke to. I mean, this story is just... I understand you have to obey the law. You can change the law. They can go in and they can change the law with this. Let's change the law so that somebody who had a peer, what was it? Prince Andrew can lose his title or something. Stuff that makes no difference to anybody. Can we all agree? Everyone goes into Parliament on Monday morning next week, and you just change the law so that this guy, anybody can be deported if you commit a crime like this. What is the difficulty here?
It's a question.
Who wouldn't agree with that?
And it's a question of political will. At the end of the day, yes, there are certain...
It's not a priority.
It's not, and it's never been a priority. Yeah. If anything, the priority was to cover it up for decades and decades and decades.
That said, do I want him back in Pakistan, where he would be absolutely free to be abusing girls in Pakistan? I want him behind bars or in a wooden box underground. Those are my only two options.
And I think that you would be hard-pressed to find anyone who would...
So why do we, again, I find it extraordinary that anyone can be in politics and not make that happen and not see that happening. Also, here's the thing. Hey, Pakistan, you don't want your paedophile back? Then no one from your country gets to come here. There are going to be no more... You take your pedos back, or no one gets to come here. This is what we could do. Your visas are gone. We don't have a load of people wanting to go to Pakistan, not a big holiday destination. It's up to you. You can take your wrong uns back, or you don't get to send anyone here. I would do that tomorrow if I was Prime Minister, and I think anyone who cared about children not being subject to rape would. Just extraordinary. Oh, anyway, that's how useless these people are. Coming up, you're going to take the latest headlines. Then we're going to be talking to Lord Dannatt, former head of the British Army. What does he make of the Prime Minister's defence investment plan? Is it enough money? This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 2 minutes past midday is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and you are either listening on DB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, or watching on YouTube or your Connect device, and whichever it is, very, very, very pleased to have you. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget, if you missed anything from the show, and why would you have, go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe so you never miss a thing. And I say, if you did miss, I mentioned a bit earlier, if you did miss my interview in the final 20 minutes of the show yesterday, you definitely want to go to my YouTube page. Have a look at my X feed as well, and you'll be able to see my interview with Helen Webberley, who runs a company called Gender GP, basically prescribing puberty blockers to children from abroad, rather usefully, and defends just frankly disgusting practice. To give you a clue of just quite how well and loving that interview was between us in the studio yesterday, it ended with me telling her that I thought people like her should be behind bars. So that'll give you a clue of how it goes. Well worth a listen, if I say so myself. But coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing that long-awaited defence investment plan, finally published by the Prime Minister. He thinks it's all part of his legacy as an outgoing PM. He said it's going to keep Britain safe and secure long into the future. An extra £15 billion a year on defence, which sounds like a huge sum of money, except it's not, and it's way, way short of what anyone who knows anything about defence is saying we do actually need. Plus, we're going to be talking about asylum seekers who, according to the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, in an immigration and asylum bill she's publishing today, will be forced to pay back £10,000 of their hotel accommodation and benefit bills after they start working, if they get approval to stay here. The trouble is, of course, most of them never do get a job, and if they do get a job, they're earning a pittance. So where the hell is that money coming from? It's yet another gimmick. But there we are. We'll talk about that. Meanwhile, migrants using the European Convention on Human Rights to stay in Britain in the last year will cost the taxpayer over their lifetime, say, whopping, wait for it, £5 billion. You're on my money. Really happy to spend that, because it's not like we've got anything else we could spend on, like, I don't know, the military. Plus, the Archbishop of York has called for the BBC to place a greater focus on ethnic diversity and accurately representing the country, which I think would mean, probably realistically, more middle-aged white people on telly. I quite enjoy that. Might work for me. Anyway, all that coming up. Delighted to say that Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, still joins me in the studio. Afternoon once again to you.
Afternoon.
I'm going to get to your calls coming up after my next guest. Let me remind you, particularly the two things I want to hear about, particularly Keir Starmer's last major act as Prime Minister is this £15 billion defence plan. It's only half, though, pretty much, of what the UK needs to defend itself. £28 billion, the number that has been put out by former Defence Chiefs and Defence Secretary. What is your reaction to that? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Text us on 87222. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Also, a lot of you are still getting back in touch about Andy Burnham and his big speech yesterday. We took it live on the show, and what he wants to deliver. Devolution. Did mention his 10-year plan and a steely-eyed focus on growth. Where have we heard both of those things before? How's that working out for Keir Starmer? Not very well. But he says he's going to rewire Britain. But he's going to do it from Manchester. Half the time he's going to be working in Manchester rather than in Downing Street. Are we going to have government by Zoom now? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Again, the number to call, 0344 499 1000. Delighted to say, though, given that we want to talk about the Defence Investment Plan, Prime Minister speaking this morning just after the Chancellor and the new Defence Secretary, Dan Jarvis, and saying that this is all about a defence plan that is going to actually secure our future. You know, who better to ask about whether or not it actually will than the former head of the British Army, Lord Richard Dannett. Lord Dannett, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you too.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, you probably could bear to listen to the outgoing Prime Minister. I decided I'd spare my audience and indeed my own sanity from having to listen to that man one more time. But he's given a speech, finally announced this Defence Investment Plan. And it is more money than was offered to John Healey when he was Defence Secretary, which was £13.5 billion more a year. He said that wasn't enough. He said that it simply couldn't keep our country safe. He also pointed out that £3.5 billion of that wasn't wasn't really new money. It was just an accounting trick. We're now told that the new Defence Secretary, Jan Jarvis, is welcoming £15 billion increase. Again, I would assume that £3.5 billion of that is also just an accounting trick. Is that enough to secure not just our borders, but our interests and our strategic interests abroad?
Well, I think, Julia, you've got to put this in the widest context. The Strategic Defence Review, published in July last year, gave a very thorough analysis of the threats and the dangers faced by this country, and came up with 62 recommendations to counter those threats. And we were promised the Defence Investment Plan last autumn, which was the money to be allocated to meet those 62 recommendations to deal with the threats identified by the Defence Review.
Yeah.
Well, eventually today, the Defence Investment Plan is being published. Now, we don't know the detail of it until the Secretary of State for Defence sits down in the House of Commons, at which point the document will then become public and we can all pore over the very many pages and the detail in there. But what we do know, and I did listen to the Prime Minister a little while ago, that £15 billion is what is now on the table. But, you know, it's a funny old thing. If he had done this last autumn, when he said that the Defence Investment Plan would be published, John Healey would still be Secretary of State for Defence, Al Carnes would Minister for the Armed Forces, and Keir Starmer himself would not be about to exit number 10 to hand the keys to Andy Burnham. Frankly, actions have consequences and inaction has consequences, and the inaction by the Prime Minister last autumn, this spring until now, has resulted in him losing his job just as surely as the frustration felt by John Healey and Al Carnes.
And that's the thing. Certainly John Healey's resignation was absolutely damning. His resignation speech, and indeed Al Carnes' resignation letter. Sorry, but this is the thing. It all contributed to just a feeling that this was a Prime Minister who just simply couldn't do the job, was dithering and indecisive, and couldn't do what he said was needed. But this is the thing: the Strategic Defence Review. You know, this was a document that was co-authored by, you know, the former NATO Secretary General, former Labour Defence Secretary Lord Robertson, asked by the Prime Minister to do it, and then, you know, identifying the threats, the Prime Minister himself spoke at a conference with NATO leaders only a few weeks ago, saying that we could face a threat. Our security intelligence agencies are saying we could face a threat by 2030 from Russia, a serious threat to Britain, and yet not offering the sort of money, the sort of funding, the sort of military hardware that would be needed to actually counter that threat. Seems to me to be an act of, almost treason, or frankly, national suicide, isn't it?
Well, if you listen to the Prime Minister this morning, you could take some comfort that he, currently at the top of government, understands the range of threats that we're facing, and that we must take action to deal with it. But, as we're all understanding, 15 billion is not the 28 billion that's required. By 2029, that will probably get us to about 2.7% of GDP. But as you said, quite rightly, at the Munich Security Conference back in February, the Prime Minister talked about going to 3% by 2029, by the end of this Parliament. Why? Because there is a credible threat from Russia to make an attack on NATO by the end of this decade. So if we know there's going to be a potential attack by Russia for whatever reason or wherever by the end of this decade, and that we need £28 billion to properly play our part in Europe's collective security, why are we not putting £28 billion on the table into the budget now, and hoping that 15 billion will do?
We know it won't.
We need to see the detail when it's published later on today, but the headline numbers don't cut it.
No, well, it's interesting because one of the things he said, which really rather surprised me, speaking of Berkshire, he said that the defence spending would increase to, you know, this extra 15 billion from 65 billion right now to 80 billion a year by 2029. And he insisted that that plan would take the UK to spending 4.2% of GDP on defence by the end of the decade. Again, I don't know where he gets these numbers from, unless he's assuming there is no growth whatsoever. Like, that figure right now would be 4.2% of GDP, but GDP will grow at some, a small amount. I mean that number is frankly just, pie in the sky, isn't it? It's almost what Poland is spending, 4.5% of GDP, Germany 3.7%. Those are two nations, and many other nations in Europe, massively arming. And I was stunned to see this stat this morning, that out of the NATO countries, and there are 32 NATO countries, as you of course will well know, we are 31st in terms of the percentage increase, the boost in terms of our spending on our military in the face of this Russian threat and many other threats around the world as well. And the only country behind us, and there's 32, is Iceland. And the reason they're behind us is because they don't have a sodding military at all. Now, we used to be a big player. I know we're no longer, ruling the waves and got an empire anymore, but we need to be able to defend not just our own nation state, which it appears we are incapable of doing right now, but also our national interest. For instance, naval bases in Cyprus, which we've been unable to defend, to play a role in any other conflict that does arise, and we tend to be pretty bad at predicting those that do arise. Do you think that this just leaves us genuinely at risk from an attack by countries like Russia or China, whether it's cyber sabotage of cables or whatever? Do you think we are genuinely now at risk?
Well, as we've said before, the Strategic Defence Review outlined all the risks that we face. They also outlined the 62 recommendations, and we know the cost of putting those into place. And if you choose not to spend the money, then you are accepting more risk. Now, you mentioned this 4.2% figure. I don't know where that's been plucked out of the air from.
No.
Because the other thing which the Prime Minister said this morning is that by 2035, by the middle of the next decade, we will be spending 3.5%. Now, that's a genuine increase from where we are today at about wherever we are, up to 3.5% by the middle of next year. So we're middle of next decade. So where 4.2% comes from, I don't know. Yeah. But to come back to your other point, we, the UK, we should be a big player in terms of European security. Britain, France, Germany, and Poland are the big players in there. And we really should be pulling our weight for ourselves, but also as partners contributing to European security. Germany, Poland, the Baltic states, quite rightly, closest to the threat from Russia, have rapidly decided to increase their defence expenditure. We've analysed our own security. We've said what we need to do, but we're not doing it. So the current Prime Minister is making us all carry risk. And here's the challenge for Andy Burnham. If he backslides from the trajectory that Keir Starmer has just announced today, and don't forget there's going to be another government spending review next year, and we need to see more money going into defence coming from elsewhere in the government spending priorities. If Andy Burnham thinks that he can kick this can down the road, kick it into the long grass, I'm afraid he's got another thing coming, because the cat is out of the bag. We know the risks. The defence lobby the volume has been turned up. The country knows we're at risk, and I think it's only right and proper that the next Prime Minister continues the movement of this Prime Minister, increases the defence expenditure to get it to where it should be. She's certainly 3.5% of real money.
Yes, real money, not extra money for veterans. So all very important to spend that money, but it doesn't actually help our fighting ability today. But this is the interesting thing, isn't it? Is that we were saying earlier, if Keir Starmer had a bit more political nous, he could have, massively upped defence, but he could have done the full 28 billion. He could have done more than that. I mean, they're saying 28 billion is the basics we need. Not taking us above that. He could have promised 30 billion quid and said, right, I'll leave it to Andy Burnham if he wants to cut it, but that would have been his legacy. I mean, it would have been dishonest of him to do it, because you need to cut spending elsewhere in order to do it, and he's avoided doing that. But that's the reality. Can I ask you about some specifics the Prime Minister also said? He said his defence investment plan would make the British Army 10 times more lethal, with attack drones flying along our Apache helicopters, a new fleet of surveillance drones collecting intelligence and finding targets, and a surge in low-cost, one-way attack drones, which have proved so effective in Ukraine. He says on top of this, we're investing in long-range missiles, armoured vehicles, counter-drone defence systems, 500 million quid in new technologies and capabilities for our commandos and our special forces, 150 million to raise our defences against the threats of AI. I mean, it all sounds great and good. Is that the future? Is that the future of fighting? Is that what we've seen in Ukraine?
Well, we'll know the detail when the plan goes public later on today, when the Secretary of State for Defence sits down. So that's where the
stands
detail...
up. So after he speaks. We won't get into it after he sits down.
Makes a statement and then he sits down.
Yep.
When he sits down, that's when the plan is then published, and we can all pore over the tens of pages that are there in it. But what's already been trailed heavily overnight, and we've all seen the material, is that an extra £5 billion is being allocated from somewhere within this 15 million or within the existing defence budget to go into drone warfare. Now that is right and proper, because the war that's hot at the present moment, the war that's ongoing, is the war in Ukraine. And we, the UK, from Boris Johnson onwards, we've been standing, quite rightly, pledging our support shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine and increasingly learning lessons from them. It was ironical at the start of this war, we were training their soldiers, and now we're learning so much from them. But particularly what we are watching is the speed at which their innovation goes round in rapid cycles. And we've got to emulate that to get the new technology to respond to modern circumstances, to make our defence procurement process much more agile, much slicker.
But isn't that something that happens during wartime? The necessity of war means that happens.
Well, necessity is the mother of invention. I think we know that cliche, and that's being borne out by what the Ukrainians are doing. But frankly, we shouldn't sit back and say, well, they're fighting a hot war, we're actually not. We are in a conflict situation now. Russian vessels are examining our undersea cables. They are examining where our energy supplies come through under the North Sea. We are having our major businesses hacked in a cyber fashion. We have seen a Russian poisoned in this country. We're in a conflict situation now. We can't sit back and say, well done the Ukrainians, but actually it's not happening to us.
It is already. We've had our own Prime Minister's home firebombed, for goodness sake. If you had to predict, Lord Dannatt, how this war will start. Ukraine, Russia built up their forces massively, and all these experts apparently saying, well, he's not going to invade. I mean, I thought there was a bit of a clue with 120,000 men and a bunch of tanks sitting there that he was. But we can't just roll his tanks into the UK. You mentioned, cabling, cyber attacks, and there's no doubt there's been a lot of testing of our responses to things like, their jets and their warships coming by, and you say monitoring our cabling and things. How do you think that conflict, if we do get to it, would start? What would the actions be, or have we already started?
Well, I think the word testing is right. Vladimir Putin, scrape him to the core. You've got an unreconstructed KGB colonel whose beloved Soviet Union and Warsaw Pact was destroyed by the unity of the West in 1989 when the Berlin Wall came down. He would love nothing more than to fracture the unity of NATO. And the way that he'll probably do it is, at some point, there'll be some form of ceasefire in Ukraine. This will give the Russians the opportunity to reconstitute their forces. And then he might choose to go again in Ukraine, but he might choose to make an incursion, a modest incursion, into, say, one of the Baltic states, to test the veracity of Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty. An attack on one is an attack on all members. He would want to prove whether there is still validity in that or not. And that's the kind of test that we may see.
And we may fail.
We may fail. I mean, if the United States decides that it's not going to go and take action because Estonia has been threatened, or indeed we might decide not to take action if Estonia is threatened. Now, that would be extraordinary, because there is a British battle group in Estonia today as we speak, and there are plans to reinforce that. And that's the sort of support, that's the kind of deterrent effect that we need to see more of. And that's why fully funding the SDR outcomes, fully funding the Defence Investment Plan is so really, really important to make sure not that we can better fight a war, but that we can more assuredly deter future aggression. And that's the whole point of a defence capability.
Absolutely. It's so good to talk to you, Lord Dannatt. Richard Dannatt, former head of the British Army. Thank you for that. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, listening to that. Always, let's talk to somebody who knows what he's talking about.
Now let's talk to me.
I'm both, yes, you and me. We'll try now, amateurs. I'm both reassured and now absolutely terrified.
Yep.
In equal measure.
I think that's a fair assessment, but this is the problem, is that for a very long time we've had governments, not just Keir Starmer's Labour government, but the Tories as well, who thought that they're on this sort of holiday from history, who thought that conflict, certainly of the sort we might have seen in the 20th century, was over. Ukraine should have shattered that illusion. It sort of didn't. We still continue down the path that we continued down.
It's quite bizarre that it hasn't made the people go, oh, hold on a minute.
Because it would force them to make some genuinely tough choices, as Keir Starmer always liked to say, actually thinking about our entire political economy and how it's gone wrong over many decades, and particularly for a Labour Party, which many people who get elected to Parliament wearing that rosette, these are not the issues that animate them, but they're going to have to start animating them, and anyone, frankly, wants to stick up for their constituents, because if if you want a country, you've got to be able to defend it, and that's hopefully the penny will start to drop.
Yeah, a lot of those. I keep saying, a lot of those young men that they'd much rather see sitting at home with anxiety on PIP. A lot of those young men are going to be conscripted if we're at war. Everyone's got to get to grips with this. What worries me is the number of people who will be going, well, you know, if Estonia's attacked, it's not really my problem. Well, good luck, but, you know, let me talk you through how the 1930s went, folks. I mean, people really, really do need to wake up. What I find most extraordinary and most deplorable in our current outgoing Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is he talks the talk and appears to recognise the threat and then fails to do anything about it and lies and says he is doing something about it. I mean, unforgivable. The history books will not be kind, and they definitely won't be kind to Andy Burnham. Each Prime Minister who takes that mantle on is going to be facing even more of a clear threat. And on that happy note, do give us a call, 0344 499 1000. We're going to go to a quick break. First up, though, just to remind you, TalkSport have teamed up with Meantime to create a lager in time for the World Cup. This is one for you, Tom. It's called So Good Lager, which will be poured from all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. So whether you're watching the action this summer or settling in for an afternoon with your friends, please make sure you check it out at talksport.com/so good to find your nearest pub. So Good is 18 plus. Obviously, please drink responsibly, even if we don't. And the 2026 World Cup, as we know, is well in action now. Some shock results last night, I have to say. Here at Talk, we are celebrating in style. That's why we're giving you the chance to boost your bank balance with a massive £26,000 in tax-free cash for a summer you won't forget. Here's how to enter.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 8338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1 PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 8338 now. This is a network promotion, full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
Monday. We've got some breaking news that has just come in. TalkSport have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:25 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. A lot of you want to have your say. Interestingly, not so many of you calling in on defence. I think we've talked about defence so many times in recent years, and we know this is just another damp squib in terms of what the Prime Minister has announced. But a lot of you are very unimpressed with one Andy Burnham about to be our next Prime Minister. Louise is in Kent and wants to have her say. Good afternoon, Louise.
Oh, hi, Julia.
Hello. What do you want to say, my love?
Now, I'm somebody who reads very, very widely, all the background, everything, listen to us, etc. There's one thing about this house building and stuff, And
this is the council. He wants to build
the
tens of hundreds of thousands. Yeah,
the councils, right, to start with. For startly, he wants to do all this devolution, give the councils more power, and yet at the moment we're all undergoing this organisation with the unitary authorities and everything else.
Yeah.
Which can take, another 3 years or something. So how is Andy coming in? How's that going to affect that? Plus, I do reflect that, is it 10 county councils across the country are now reform?
Yeah.
So you're giving all the money to reform, which you may not like.
Can I just say, by the way, given that the argument from Keir Starmer was that all this reorganisation of councils, they were so busy, they were dealing with that, they couldn't possibly organise any local elections in their local area until there was a legal challenge from reform. They were so busy doing that. How does he think they can organise council house building when they can't organise just sending out a piece of ballot paper?
Thing, which is to bypass a lot of people, there's just been a court case in Manchester just before the week where Andy Burnham's lot were up in trouble over possibly some funds which were directed supposedly, and I was looking it up this morning. Apparently they're looking, because they lost the appeal, they're now looking at whether or not they go to Supreme Court because of this massive amount of funding that social housing became too expensive for people to buy.
But this happened. There was like 400 million quid given to a private property developer by the local authority, and basically it was supposed to be, there was lots of fancy big apartments, tower blocks, but there was also going to be a load of affordable and social housing, and then it just got dwindled to, they thought, we can't afford to do it now. This is what happens in every local council. You can build your new development, you have to do some socially affordable homes, and then they end up building 10 of them.
I know, and he wants to do all this council, and yet they're now looking at taking this, because it was more than 400 million. I think it was 660 million, because it's two cases.
Ah, right.
And they're looking at taking to the Supreme Court.
I think a fair summary of this call, Louise, is that you don't think that moving money out to the local councils is going to make anything any better.
Well, you've only got to look at what happened in Birmingham.
You make a fair point.
I mean, yes, there's all of this. I mean, as far as defence goes, I mean, actually, I'm not worried about what's happening in the rest of the world in a way, but what terrifies me is the way this country, the governments, are managing their defence.
Yeah, that's your concern.
I feel more concerned the fact that we're not doing anything, with everything else that's going on in the world. And everybody blames the Tories, but actually, this was also happening across the entire continent.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been happening under government after government.
Complacent. That's not.
What would you, Louise, what would you cut? What would you do to make that money available for defence?
I tell you what, I'd sort the welfare out.
Yeah.
I'd also look at PIP, because, I mean, I got PIP, but when I had to get it, I had to really fight for it. I had to have support from the mental health team. They came with me. We had diagnosis. We had letters from
And it was temporary?
a lot. It was face-to-face.
Yeah.
And it was no self-diagnosis, and the forms, when you filled them in, quite frankly, how some of these people are getting away with ADHD on those forms, how they bend the forms to fit that, I have no idea.
It's outrageous, isn't it? I really appreciate a call, Louise. We covered a lot of ground there. Thank you very much. Alan is on the line in Salford. Hello, Alan.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Afternoon. What do you want to say, my love?
Well, Andy Burnham's moving government to the burbs, eh? What a joke. And he started as a normal Labour Prime Minister. Spend, spend, spend. How much is that going to cost?
This is it. The costs of these things are huge. The hotels, they'll be building something, refurbishing something. And all the time, everyone's going to be focusing on that and not getting anything done.
Well, they're going to have to do all the technical work as well, computers and government this and YouGov that. But another point, if I may.
Yes, please.
What will save you, I've just been looking it up again, I've looked it up a few times, public sector pensions.
Oh, yes.
It started off years ago and it cost over £3 trillion to set it up. And it's costing 57 billion. You can look, I've looked all over on these sites, YouGov, 57 billion a year just to top these pensions up.
Ouch.
Now, reform, if I was reform, I would now scrap public sector pensions to civil servants.
No, you can't. That's not that. No, that would be unreasonable. I mean, again, listen. If they didn't have this, you can change the terms. You can't change you can't scrap the pensions. But by the way, otherwise they'll just be reliant on the state anyway.
They've changed the terms of the pension instead of the people of the country topping it up by something like 11%. I think.
Yeah,
it is,
I think for doctors extraordinary, it's about 20%. I mean, it's just so they'll say I'm on this pay, but another fifth on top is going into their pensions paid on top of it. I mean, it's just. And I mean, a lot of them still got final salary pension schemes. I mean, for the private sector, they were out the window about 20 years ago.
Well, I've got a private sector one, and now I'm being taxed on it, £270 a month. That's what I get out of 383.
Yeah.
So, but also, if they're going to do that, I think reform should do that. There's only the army and the police, but I'm not sure about the police at the moment because I can't trust the police, to be honest with you.
Well, okay.
But the army would be the only ones to get the public sector pension for me.
Right, well, there you are then. Alan's being a bit ruthless. If you want to call in and complain, you work in the public sector, I'll give you a number for Alan. Don't call me. Thank you very much, Alan. Steve is in Scunthorpe. Steve, you want to talk about that story we just talked about, this Pakistani grooming gang ringleader who we can't. He's coming out of prison on Thursday. We can't deport him because he's thrown away his Pakistani passport. We've taken away his British nationality, but we can't deport him because of some law in 1971, and he arrived before 1973. It's madness, isn't it?
It is, and I think you've been listening to my phone calls because what you said about just getting on to Pakistan and saying, take him back or else.
Yeah.
That was it. The other thing, because you stole me thunder there, the other thing was about defence. Now, I can understand that a lot of money is spent on equipment, and that's going to be the big draw.
Yeah.
The good thing without having loads of soldiers or airmen or seamen and that is we employ them. They pay taxes, they spend money here.
Yeah.
Now, the only way we can recoup any money we spend now is by manufacturing our own armaments.
Yeah. I mean, we should definitely be doing that. And that be part of the reindustrialisation. That would make sense.
Right. And I would put so much money into that and get the money back that way. You can, it's like civil servants and that.
Yeah.
They still, they still pay their taxes. They still spend the money in this country.
Yeah, and let's create those high-skilled jobs and create that. I mean, and again, in the event of war, you need to be able to make this stuff. Again, would be easier, wouldn't it, if we hadn't got rid of all of our, steel-making facilities and a lot of our manufacturing because of high energy costs. I mean, it might have been an easier way of doing some of this, if they thought about this down the line. Steve, great call. Thank you very much. 12:34 is the time. Going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about asylum seekers being forced to repay their hotel bills if they get leave to stay, none of whom actually ever will. The huge cost of migrants using the European Convention of Human Rights to stay in Britain, and why Spain is triggering this very day the largest migrant amnesty in European history. That's all coming up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer and Tom Slater is still here. And we're now joined by Danny Shaw, Home Affairs commentator, also a former advisor to Yvette Cooper when she was Shadow Home Secretary. A very, very, very good morning to you, Danny. Afternoon, sorry.
Afternoon, Julia.
I've written the day away there. So many stories I want to get to. Let's start with this. It's quite a big story in the papers today. Asylum seekers will be forced to repay hotel bills. This is something that Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, wants to bring in. This is part of her asylum and immigration bill that she's publishing today. But basically, they'll be forced to pay back £10,000 of their hotel accommodation and their benefit bills under these rules if they get the right to permanently settle in the UK. They get the right to stay here, and they'll be barred from permanent settlement unless they pay off the 10 grand charge once they're able to start working. This sounds great. It's a load of abject nonsense, isn't it?
I agree. It sounds great. I can't see how it's going to work in practice. I think, look, the principle of it, I think, is really good, is really sound. You know, if you come here and you claim asylum, and you're allowed to stay, then it's fair, I think, that you should contribute towards some of the costs while your claims were being processed. I think the principle is fine. The issue is that a lot of those people, their claims will be rejected, so they're not included. The people whose claims will be accepted, many of them won't end up in work. Those that do are going to end up in low-paid jobs. They won't be able to afford it. And then all chasing people for these payments, just as chasing people who don't pay council tax, is going to be really onerous. And I wonder if the cost of administering the scheme will actually outweigh the benefits of it.
That was my first
and the money
thought.
that's recouped.
Absolutely. I mean, looking at the stats, one of our regular guests, David Shipley, has looked at the numbers. After 8 years, so okay, maybe you don't have a job within a year, but after 8 years of being in this country, only 1 in 5 asylum seekers who've been granted the right to stay here work full time. The rest of them most of them not working, otherwise doing a little bit of part-time, the odd ad hoc few hours. The average pay, the median pay of those working full-time is £13,000 a year. I mean, that's not even, it's way less than half of minimum wage. So that's a bit strange. They're claiming to be working full-time. But basically, there's no way in the world they're going to be paying back 10 grand. Even if they paid a £1 a week, it's not going to happen. As you say, the admin for dealing with it is going to be greater than it costs. I mean, but a lovely headline that people might like, but actually, it's utterly meaningless, and therefore it's a lie to us. Let's also talk about the other massive cost. Asylum seekers who've invoked the European Convention on Human Rights, the ECHR, to stay in the UK last year, according to a Home Office analysis, will cost the taxpayer a whopping 4.9 billion quid, so almost 5 billion quid over their lifetimes, because, as we know, these people are largely unskilled or low-skilled. If they do work, they will be on low wages, like a lot of these people who will never pay their hotel bills back. And we're going to be paying for them for the rest, and their children and their wives, largely, for the rest of their lives. Not sure this is a good deal for the taxpayer.
Well, it just goes to the problem that we used immigration for many years after the expansion of the European Union in the early 2000s, and then the Boris wave, when Brexit was supposed to allow us to put controls on immigration, but in fact the numbers rocketed. We have allowed immigration to be used to plug shortages in our workforce in the UK, rather than training people, giving people apprenticeships, giving people a decent salary, decent wages, and using people who are based here to fill those labour shortages. That's predominantly what it is. Yep. And it's also because universities have relied on foreign students to plug income gaps that they have, because the education system, the financing of it is completely nonsensical. So those are the two kind of structural problems that have meant that we've had this influx of migration, and as you say, many of them in low skilled work. I don't blame them. I blame the people that made these decisions.
I blame both. But I mean, 34,000 asylum seekers were granted the right to stay in the UK under, this is crucial, Article 8, the right to a family life under the ECHR last year. Just last year. And again, we're not looking at just, paying the benefits. We're looking at funding their NHS care, their schools, their pensions in years to come. I mean, this is a massive, massive, big extra cost. What do you make of, reform? And I think the Tories look at this well, but reform are very clear. You ain't going to be entitled to any benefits. You're not going to be able to claim a lot of these things if you are a foreign national, whether you've come here legally or illegally, you've got the right to stay or not. Do you think that is going to be feasible, or is that just going to be instantly challenged
I don't think
in the courts?
I don't think it's feasible, Julia, because what you will end up with is destitution, people on the streets. And
well, then maybe they'll go home at that point.
Consequences of that. Well, some people may not come and some people may go home, but also, we have seen the consequences of harsh policies.
Have we? When have we had those?
Well, you see the consequences of harsh policies in other areas. You see the consequences, for example, in terms of refugees. There was a rule that basically once their claim had been decided, even if they'd been accepted, they then had a limited amount of time to sort of move out of accommodation. And what ended up with that wasn't enough time. You ended up with people sleeping in tents and sleeping on the streets.
So, as happens to care, people who come out of care, children who come out of care,
yes.
People who come out of prison. But we don't care about them, apparently. I mean, if we're going to be helping people, I'd rather we helped our own.
Well, if you've been accepted for asylum, then given refugee status, then you are entitled to live in this country. The problem is the system is overloaded.
Danny, you know as well as I, the huge number of the people who were granted the right to stay in this country haven't been given asylum, haven't been granted refugee status. They've just been given the right to stay here because there's no feasible chance of sending them home.
There are a proportion of people who are in that situation, and it's a situation that's not ideal, but frankly, I don't believe that you can send someone to torture or to execution or to death in their home country.
But we're not talking about that.
Well, there are some people.
Some people are.
The category you're talking about includes some who we can't send back. They haven't been given necessarily asylum status, but their country isn't safe for them to go back. They're not actually personally at risk persecution, but the country just isn't safe. Now, there are lots of people in that category. There are some other people that don't have documents. There's a number of people. The basic problem is there are too many in the for the system to cope, and that's a result of a number of different policies. If we get it down to more manageable levels, then I think people generally will accept the concept that people genuinely fleeing war, persecution, torture or ill treatment should be given shelter.
I think people understand that political activists and fleeing, but I'm afraid I think the British public are now. I think we are heartached out, and the idea that anyone whose country is not a very pleasant country to live in anymore should have the right to come and live in our country at public expense. I think people are saying
unpleasant is different. Unpleasant is different.
I mean,
it might be unpleasant.
People are coming from Eritrea because they're being conscripted to the army and by a nasty regime. Well, yeah, sorry about that. Not my problem. Not my problem. Not my problem. I think that's what a lot of British people are saying. But I think a lot of people are saying a lot of these people need to do what we did in our country and our forefathers did in our country, which is deliver a better regime that works for people, to fight tyranny, Britain didn't become Britain out of the blue. We didn't just pop up on the earth a relatively nice, safe place to live. People worked hard to deliver that. And the rest of the world doesn't have a right to come and share in those benefits. I think that's what most people think now.
I think there's a number of people that think that, but I still go back to what I said. Basically, there is an appreciation and support for people who are genuinely in need. Look at the Ukrainian scheme, for example. 260,000 people have come here.
And Hong Kong.
No one really disputes that at all. But because the immigration system was completely out of control, and you had net migration approaching 1 million, I think, 1 or 2 years. Because the system's out of control, people see their communities changing, they're struggling with their own lives, struggling to get access to public services and so on, then there isn't that consent that I think there would be otherwise
if it was
for people to be given shelter and refugee status.
If it was down where
otherwise.
we demanded, I think back in 2010 and were promised and never got. Well, that leads me actually very neatly into what's happening in Stoke Heath in Shropshire, where 83 asylum seekers are to be moved into brand new build homes, 21 smart new build homes. 250 grand these homes are going for on the market, and they've been earmarked for families, asylum seeker families, as opposed to local people who are crying out for these affordable homes. I mean, this is exactly the sort of thing. These were supposed to be social homes for families on lower incomes, and they're going to arrivals to this country who have been granted asylum. This is exactly the sort of thing that breaks, the social contract that people feel there should still be.
Well, it's a consequence of moving people out of asylum hotels. Yeah. That's probably what it is. We know that there have been, I think, 20 or 30 hotels closed under this government, and that those people have to go somewhere. Yeah. Not all those people
new
are
builds,
going to be leaving
brand
the
new,
UK.
Lovely new homes. I mean, should they be taking priority over local families? Those local families need to go somewhere too.
Absolutely, I agree. We have a shortage of housing stock. To be fair, I don't know all the details about that case, but I can understand that if you live in that street or live in those roads and suddenly you've got the prospect of 20 homes, I think, with 80 asylum seekers coming in, you might feel something wrong with that, something not quite right about that in terms of your community.
Exactly. Listen, I want to get one final story because this has been brewing for a while. Spain is planning to grant legal residency and working rights to undocumented migrants in the largest scheme of its kind in European history. The deadline for applications is today, and they'd expected 500, this is the centre-left coalition government, 500,000 people in the country to apply. Extraordinarily, it's not like these aren't people who've been in the country 10 or 20 years. We're talking about anyone who went to Spain before January the 1st and has spent 5 consecutive months in the country. So we've known about this coming up for many, many months. And then, so people just turned up en masse. Oh, you need a clean criminal record. They've now had at least 1.3 million applications made, and all those people will get the right to live and work in Spain. Interestingly, the EU has said, EU Commission, pressure, I think, from Giorgia Meloni in Italy and elsewhere, that the residence permits would apply only in Spain and not the rest of the EU. But this is an amnesty that is only going to encourage greater arrivals to Europe, isn't it?
Well, it's particular to Spain. It's not going to apply in other countries. So
what's to stop
if there's going to be an issue about people arriving, then it will be Spain that they will come to. But this is what the government has decided because it feels that, firstly, it will help their economy. It will support the growing older population and it will support economic growth. So it's made a decision about that. It has put some caveats on it about having a clean criminal record and so on, having to be in the country for 5 consecutive months.
5 long months.
I'm sure it's not the sort of policy you would approve, Julia. I'm sure you'll be boycotting Spain on your summer holidays.
I have a funny feeling it's going to go very badly. They've got mass youth unemployment. The idea they need to import a load of unskilled labour from North Africa is absolutely insane.
That is a complete puzzle. That is a puzzle for me. You've got mass youth unemployment.
I think we'll be talking about this in a few years' time, and we will absolutely agree it's all gone horribly wrong. Danny Short, so appreciate you joining us. Covered a lot of ground there. Appreciate your thoughts and insights. Dump Slater, just on that final story, Spain. I mean, interesting. Very interesting. The European Commission has gone, no, they can't travel for residency. There's nothing to stop them, though.
No, exactly. What Pedro Sanchez has done is basically pull an angle of Merkel. We all know what happened in that situation. And the problem is, when you're a big European country making a decision like that, it has an impact on all the other European countries as well.
Another reason to have left.
And purely because he's just over a barrel in terms of the left of his coalition. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to.
I've got no time for that government.
But surely this will sign his political death warrant. I think the consequences of it are going to be extreme.
A disaster. Anyway, 12:50 is time. Quick break. Then we're going to be talking about why the Archbishop of York says the BBC should focus on, I kid you not, more ethnic diversity. Yeah, this is Talk.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. TalkSport have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Ian Collins coming in just a few moments. Tell us what's happening on his show after 1 o'clock. Tom Slater's still with me. Get his thoughts on what our next story is. This is a call from the Most Reverend Stephen Cottrell. He's the Archbishop of York, one of the very senior figures in the Church of England. He says the BBC needs to place a greater focus on ethnicity. I know, I'm as surprised as you are. He says the public service broadcasting should reflect British communities that find their identity in ethnic origin and religious faith, and this should be more important than reflecting geographical diversity or hiring presenters with a regional accent. He says protecting the place of religion in the media in a digital age. He said public service broadcasters need to reflect identity, and it's now more rooted in ethnicity and religion than in geography. Let's talk about this with Dr. Gavin Ashenden, former chaplain to the late Queen Elizabeth and also associate editor of the Catholic Herald. A very good afternoon to you, Gavin.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I was thinking, as soon as I saw this headline, that what the Archbishop of York is calling for, if you have more focus on ethnic diversity, surely what he's calling for is we should have more white people on telly, because as far as I can tell, when it comes to adverts and pretty much any new TV show or show, it's obsessed with nothing but ethnic diversity, actually not in any way representing the actual ethnic makeup of our country.
Well, you're right, of course. The BBC are the greatest promoters of multiculturalism. But he's not talking facts, he's talking ideology. And most of the words he uses are euphemisms for other things. So concentrating on ethnic diversity really means let's loosen the glue of social cohesion, because that's what happens. Communities work by being comfortable with people like them. And the fewer people like you there are, the more anxiety and alienation there is. But he's got so much wrong. I mean, first of all, he's the Archbishop of York. That's a regional post. The whole basis of his office depends upon caring for people in terms of regions.
In terms of place. I mean, Andy Burnham talked about place. That's the whole point. Your identity is, Yorkshire man or woman.
Yes, well, that's right. So, I mean, he's cutting off the sort of the branch of the tree that he's sitting on. And then the difficulty is he's also calling for a degree of censorship. He says, let's not allow people to listen to disinformation. I think the people he's talking about are you and me.
Oh, yes.
But actually, this is the man who so mishandled an abuse case for one of his clergy, who was called David Tudor, who had sex with underage girls. But for 8 years, he left him in place. And then when safeguarding victims complained, he said, stop being so shouty. So he's very careful about who he gives the microphone to.
I think we should absolutely be shouty. And if you have sex with an underage girl, what you're doing is raping them. So let's be very clear. We're being shouty about someone committing heinous child abuse. But this is the thing. I mean, I kind of say, can we find any senior figure in the Church of England or any church in this country that hasn't basically tried to sort of quietly make a lot of these sex crimes go away? I can't think of one. But this is the thing. This is, again, very much getting involved in the political world, isn't it? And we've seen this again and again. I mean, Archbishop of Canterbury's over the years, it's non-stop in terms of getting involved in the politics of the country. And this is one of the things that puts people off, because it doesn't feel that the Church of England is very inclusive of everybody who follows the church. It's actually, when it talks about inclusive, it's people who have a very specific, let's face it, left, centre-left, sort of viewpoint.
Well, you're quite right. The thing about being a Christian is you discover there is a God, and you discover he likes you and he loves you and he's forgiven you, and you get rather excited about it. You think, actually, if this is this can change the way in which people live together, and that's why you tell people about Jesus. I have a rule of thumb, and that is that the foggier your experience of God is, the more attracted to politics you are, because you ought to have, it's a kind of compensation.
Is that why as an atheist I love politics?
Well, no, it's not at all. As an atheist, you're perfectly entitled don't love politics. You're trying to make the world a better place in an arena of your competence. But the point I'm saying is that Christian clergy ought to make the world a better place in the arena of their competence. And their competence is actually the experience and love of God. When they stop doing that, what they're really saying is, I'm no longer competent in the thing I'm supposed to do. So he's not a competent archbishop, and therefore he's turning to politics to compensate.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. But we do see this again. I say again and again that you know, whether it's talking about, you know, former archbishops, payday loans, or talking about immigration, about borders, putting their, should we say, tuppence worth in on all the big, very difficult political debates, and basically saying, we have pronounced, we are the good people, we're coming from a religious perspective, and everyone should listen to us.
Yes, well, I used to be a BBC presenter on a radio programme a while ago, and when I found clergy too political, I say to them, do you know, I think you've stopped saying your prayers and reading the Bible, and that's one of the reasons why you've got so excited about politics. And it was always true. I mean, they wouldn't admit to it, but it is a form of compensation. The world needs changing. Human being needs changing. Christianity is the best way of doing it. That's what you should be hearing an Archbishop of York say.
Really interesting to talk to you. Dr. Gavin Ashenden, thank you very much. Former chaplain to the late Queen, associate editor of the Catholic Herald. Tom Slater, I mean, you and I are both atheists, perhaps not qualified on this, but why are archbishops qualified to tell us what we can and can't think and say and what we can see on the BBC?
Well, exactly. I mean, I've wondered whether or not they've actually ceased to believe in God. I mean,
I
the
think
fact that
some of them don't, actually.
That would explain a lot. They've become the sort of Green Party at prayer over the course of recent years. That would explain a hell of a lot as to why...
Well, largely the Green Party, they're praying to a different God, I think. Or it's technically the same God, calling him someone different.
But it was when, like, the last Archbishop of Canterbury weighed in on the Rwanda scheme, you thought, what the hell is going on here? But I think it's just, as